Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1082 of the War News stream. And of course, it is a Sunday night fundraiser stream, a big day to raise more money to help those in Ukraine. And also, we've got big news to cover on tonight's stream. We've heard Ukraine launch a major Storm Shadow strike on Russia, Iran's rejecting nuclear talks, and also Ukraine started a new offensive in Pokrovsk. A lot of stuff to cover, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news from around the world, and particularly inside of the war in Ukraine, as we've been able to hear a major piece of news today that Ukraine has conducted Storm Shadow strikes into the Russian Federation about 120 miles deep, as Storm Shadows impacted around the city of Oryol, causing significant damage to Russian military sites critical to the war function of the defenders of Kursk in the Russian Federation within that direction. We have also been able to hear massive news as well that the Ukrainians have conducted a counterattack within the area of Pokrovsk, attempting to encircle and cut off an entire Russian army battle group south of the city of Pokrovsk at this moment, somewhere near to the highway at Shevchenko. We have also been able to get significant news as well that the defense of Toretsk has continued, and the Ukrainians have been able to claim several air kills within the area, shooting down Su-25 attack aircraft attempting to hit the Ukrainian defenders. Not only that, but for the first time ever on the Ukrainian front lines, we have seen the mighty, the invincible, the undisputed champion of multi-role aircraft, the F-16, in its first air-to-ground sorties in the entirety of the war. Not only that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's America, baby. But not only that, but huge news has come out in other areas of Europe today, as we were able to hear that the Estonians have cut themselves off from Russian power imports completely today, once again putting another death knell into the Russian Federation's economy, and not only that, their energy exports to their surrounding neighbors. We have also been able to hear that within the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran's government has declared that they will not be conducting any form of nuclear negotiations or talks with the United United States, saying that they are paramount to some form of capitulation, clearly showing that the Islamic Republic of Iran is on the cusp of producing a nuclear weapon and is not even willing to entertain any kind of talks at this point that may possibly slow down the development of Iran's nuclear weaponry. Once again, showing that the United States is near going to be paramount, conducting some form of aggressive military action against the Islamic Republic of Iran to stop them from developing their nuclear weapons of mass destruction and weapons of terror. But nevertheless, we have a massive amount of news today from pretty much the entirety of Eastern Europe and the Middle East. But before we get into that, I do have to remind everyone, I just want to remind everyone a little extra, that tonight is the Sunday night fundraiser. And of course, many people are wondering, Enforcer, what's going on here? You're running a show during the Super Bowl. Well, the Super Bowl technically just ended, I believe, like a minute ago or so. But nevertheless, a lot of people are like, what, Enforcer, what are you doing here? We misjudged the days. You see, we took off yesterday thinking it was the Super Bowl, and then it was tonight. I'm just kidding, by the way. There was a whole other reason for why we canceled last night's show. But I'll be entirely honest with y'all, we just completely forgot that the Super Bowl was even a thing because we don't really watch it. So we ran the show, and then people started coming in saying that the Eagles had won, and then I was like, oh, it's the Super Bowl. So there's probably not going to be a lot of people here tonight. That's fine, because it's not about having a lot of people here. It's about telling the folks that are here what the news is, and they'll probably see this tomorrow anyway, so, we got to get it out for everyone. Nevertheless, it is time for us to get on into the major news of the day. And also, by the way, do have to point out again, the fundraiser has a goal of $2,500 tonight, and we have already raised about $850 as of this point in the stream.
Hey, let's go!
Let's go, baby! And it's for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, by the way, just to throw that out there so that we all know what fundraiser it is. It's for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, a nonprofit based in Ukraine that helps to save Ukrainian soldiers' lives who have been near to killed, sometimes sustaining gunshots to the head, losing limbs, among many other things. Revive Soldiers not only helps them with the life-saving surgeries that they need, but also helps them on the path of rehabilitation, getting them prosthetic limbs, among other things, so that way they can return back to a normal life. It's an amazing nonprofit. I've already thrown in $100 to it, and so I hope that y'all all can join me, maybe match me even, if y'all want to be able to raise enough money to reach the goal tonight and send directly to Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, so that way they can continue their amazing work. But getting on into the massive news of the day, we have been able to hear that storm shadows have landed inside the Russian Federation around 120 miles deep, which is the deepest that we've ever seen a storm shadow strike be conducted so far, and it has actually inflicted serious damage onto Russian sites around the city of Oryol. We have been able to see some information here, and according to what we have, just to make sure that we read this exactly, as a result of the January 26 strikes on storage facility for attack UAVs in the Oryol region, Storm Shadow missiles hit an underground bunker with enemy drones inside. The coordinates of the affected bunker are as follows, and we're going to take that right there. And actually, we're going to remove those dash marks. There we go. And we're going to plug that right into the Google Maps so that way we can get y'all to the exact location. And this is around where the bunker is. This is a significant distance around where this bunker is, according to the geolocation that we have here in the statement. This is incredibly far away from Ukraine. Storm shadows have about a 250-mile range where they are effective, and from what we understand, a storm shadow would have flown roughly around 120 miles into this area of the Oryol Oblast to be able to hit this target. This is not even close to the entire range that the Storm Shadow is capable of. That is only about half of it. But the most important thing about this is that this is still the farthest that a Storm Shadow has ever been fired into the Russian Federation, or for that matter, the farthest that any Western weapon has been fired into the Russian Federation. This is huge. This is significant. The only other time that we've seen a strike go long, I guess you could call it, a football reference because it's the Super Bowl.
Yeah, football, man.
Get it? Well, speaking of football, it was an American attack fired near to Bryansk, and specifically towards Karachev, which was only about 70 miles inside the Russian Federation, and that was the deepest range strike that we had ever seen a Western missile conduct so far during the entire conflict. This one today bumps that range up by about 30 or 40 miles or so. So it appears that they're going for the touchdown zone, it seems, and crazily enough, it's not even the United States weaponry that's doing that. It's French and British missiles. How bizarre. I guess you could say they're going for the goal, but nevertheless, It is great to hear that they were able to inflict such significant damage onto that bunker, and from what we understand, this is going to be slowing down Russia's Shahed 136 launches, at least within this area for some time, as the supplies of available drones that could be launched has now been, of course, a little bit impeded, maybe significantly, as time will tell. But nevertheless, it was a great thing to know that the Storm Shadows were able to hit this facility, and we were able to see the damage to the top of the bunker right there with the, I guess you could say, the crater, or more so the penetration being conducted directly on the roof, showing that the Storm Shadow came down at a somewhat steeper angle, possibly around a 30-degree dive, right down into the roof of the bunker, and then blasted through, knocking out whatever was inside, and not only that, piercing the hardened shelter that appears to have been constructed at this site. Nevertheless, moving on from that news, we are going to be moving on out of the Russian Federation and the Ukraine war, and really all of Eastern Europe for a moment, because there is something else major that has happened in another area of the world, and one that I have to say was incredibly concerning, and that's why I got a decent amount of real estate on our thumbnail tonight, and a decent amount of real estate in the title. The United States, as many know, has been very concerned about the Islamic Republic of Iran's development of weapons of mass destruction, particularly those of the nuclear variety. As we have seen over the past 10 years, multiple U.S. presidents try, and all of them fail, to create any sort of actual progress in stymieing Iranian nuclear weapons development or stopping it outright. Practically every single president from 2014 to the present day has largely dropped the ball on actually stopping them from developing these weapons, and according to U.S. intelligence last year, they are getting incredibly close to being able to test a nuclear weapon and have a usable, fieldable nuclear warhead at some point here within the near future. This makes this situation one of extreme importance for U.S. and really global security, as the Islamic Republic of Iran is an incredibly unstable country. It has a government that is propped up largely by the military and is very unpopular with the public inside of the Islamic Republic. With all that in mind, it's very easy to say that this government is on such a fragile foundation that they could do practically anything to try and stay in power. The fact that this country is developing a nuclear warhead is incredibly concerning, as this country, as unstable as North Korea, or maybe even more unstable, will have the ability to strike anywhere in the world once they produce a large enough intercontinental ballistic missile and pretty much inflict terror on anyone that they so please. They may even try and launch that sort of a nuclear weapon if the internal domestic situation begins to deteriorate. This is all something that the United States and many countries within the area, like Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Turkey, all understand, and many people have been trying to see that the Iranians are at least slowed in their development of a nuclear weapon, but nowadays it appears that that isn't even a chance either, as we have been able to hear that the Iranians rejected nuclear talks with the United States entirely today. This is exactly what we were able to hear. Iran rejected the nuclear talks with the U.S. amid pressure. They called it capitulation, to even try and talk to the United States about any kind of nuclear weaponry or nuclear weapons development. Iranian authorities do not consider negotiations with the U.S. over Tehran's nuclear program reasonable under American pressure, according to their foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi. I'm hoping that I got that right, and I know I got that wrong. Negotiations from a position of weakness are not real negotiations. That is capitulation. We will never engage in talks under such conditions, meaning that the Iranians never engage in talk with the United States because we simply beast on them weakly. But nevertheless, it is something to note that the Islamic Republic of Iran is now openly stating that they will not be getting into any kind of negotiations or any kind of talks with the United States about nuclear technology, whether it be for peaceful purposes or for the purposes of warfare. They will not be talking to the United States about it at all, and will be pressing completely forward on simply trying to ensure that they are able to have a fieldable nuclear warhead within the very close future. Many people
It's
have
almost like Iran doesn't know what they're really doing at this point, because you remember just a short while back, the Iranian leader was saying, he was basically walking back all of his statements he'd said previously about how he wanted to hurt the United States, and said, oh no, Iran's just peaceful, we just want to be left alone, and that's it. And now all of a sudden they're doubling down on their nuclear program. So I wonder what's happening with that. It seems like a complete reversal.
It seems like a complete reversal, and I think that they're trying to completely reverse because they're seeing that there most likely is possibly some sort of a imminent military action that's going to happen either way. So they're going to try and make it seem like a little bit more of a of a option of their own choice to get bombed than to just get bombed sitting down, I suppose. Maybe that's what they're going for. I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I also saw someone actually bring up something very good in the chat. Taylor McLean said, can you give a little history between the United States and Iran? I'm thinking back to the 50s. That's actually a great starting point. But if you really want to talk about Iran, we'll have to go back all the way to the time of 950 AD when the Seljuk Turks moved into the territory of the modern-day Iran back in the day called Persia. Y'all can see that I'm about to pull Putin there. But we're actually going to talk from the 1950s onwards, because there actually is a lot that has really molded Iranian-U.S. relations from that time. So back in 1953, we had this guy in charge of the CIA, and I want to go find a picture of him for y'all. Because he's personally a hero of mine, because the folks over in the CIA, not that I'm affiliated with them or anything, they always said that he was a pretty great guy. But this is the guy, Allen Dulles. I would say probably the most effective leader of the CIA that's ever been seen in terms of using the CIA to its full potential. But Allen Dulles was one hell of a guy, and one of the first things that he did, being appointed under Dwight Eisenhower, and he was removed from the director of the CIA under Kennedy. Not to get political here, but that's kind of his existence, was under Eisenhower and a little bit under Kennedy. But Allen Dulles was a very interesting guy, because as soon as he got the position in 1953, he immediately was the one who oversaw and largely game planned the 1953 Iran coup d'etat. Now, this is a very important thing as far as Iranian-U.S. relations go. The 1953 coup d'etat was largely managed and operated by the CIA to largely overthrow the mildly neutral, somewhat commie-leaning government that was in Iran at the time, and to install the Shah of Persia as the leader of Iran, who was a pro-American ally during World War II and even afterwards, and it appeared that that would be a suitable option to ensure that the nation of Persia at the time would be able to remain within U.S. good graces, and we would be able to have a good relationship with them. Not only that, we would also be able to access Iranian oil along with all of the other oil exports that were happening within this region, and ensure that they did not go to the Soviets or to any other country that we were not on good terms with at that time. China really didn't matter at this point. The communist Chinese were only about 4 or 5 years old at this point, and also had been engaged in the Korean War for a little bit right at that time, so they weren't really that big of a concern. But nevertheless, the Iranians had a bit of an issue with the government being overthrown by the CIA for the large part, and by the United States, and that would generally grow over the next few decades, and also due to some of the ineptitudes of the Shah's governance, which is known in the present day. If y'all do not know, I'll explain one of them. The Shah was someone who really didn't understand governance incredibly well. He was all right. I mean, he wasn't incredibly bad. Of course, he's not as bad as the current Islamic Republic government, but he also wasn't that great either. For example, during the 1970s, which is where Iran and most of the Middle East saw a major economic crisis, it was due to the fuel shortages and oil crisis that was going on at that time, because the Saudi Arabians and a whole bunch of other countries started to refuse to sell their oil, and the prices went up around the world. But nevertheless, Iran was going through some financially difficult times because of this. And during that time that most people, I believe it was a third of Iran, was living in poverty, he ended up conducting the largest military parade in Persia's history. It was the most expensive one, because every single unit in the military was present in the parade, and every single one of them was dressed up in period-accurate uniforms of every single historic era of Persia. It was incredibly expensive. It was one of the largest funding undertakings taken by Persia during that year, and then, of course, led a lot of people to believe that extremism was the only answer, and that overthrowing the Shah would be a good idea. Fast forward now to 1979, and the anti-American and anti-Shah sentiments, because of the CIA largely putting the Shah in place, and then also the Shah being somewhat not the greatest of leaders, especially when it comes to finances and running the country and administrating it, the Islamic extremists under the Iranian Revolutionary Guard ended up conducting a government coup while the Shah was inside the United States. And they ended up succeeding. They also ended up, at that time, as many people would know, this is a very famous thing here in the United States, holding the entire U.S. embassy staff hostage for an incredibly long time. I believe it was around a year. And that was what really brought forward the Islamic Republic's government. It is strongly based in anti-American hatred, as well as hatred for Israel as well, due to a whole bunch of other reasons that we cannot get into because they're pretty much the same ones that were outlined in that book written by that German guy who ran Germany in World War II. But nevertheless, they're not the greatest of people, and they have kept that anti-American sentiment and that anti-Israeli sentiment to an extreme through the present day. And that's largely, in a very, very condensed nutshell, the reason why U.S.-Iranian relations are incredibly poor. Not only that, the Iranians have funded and financed terror groups throughout the entirety of the region, including Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis being the newest and the most recent, to continue to destabilize the region and not only get back at U.S.-backed allies within the area, but to also try and operate against U.S. interests in the region. Then this has also continued to further hurt the relationship in between Iran and the United States. Overall, that's generally the story, but catching up to the present day, a lot of people are talking about the issue that's going on right now, especially with the Iranians rejecting U.S. nuclear talks. Is Iran going all in on nuclear weapons development? And that's really the question that everyone's being faced with these days. And it looks like unanimously everyone is believing that the Iranians must be going all in on creating a weapon of mass destruction at this point. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like 78% of the audience, the overwhelming majority, said yes, Iran is fully committed to the nuclear development, while only 5% said no, Iran will back off soon, and 12% said they probably already have a nuke, and that's why they're suddenly getting so confident. And I would say this, it sounds like Iran is going all the way in. That's a little bit weird to me because they had just backed off of that about, I think, like less than 2 weeks ago. The Iranian leader came out and said that he was going to stop funding the terror groups, and he was going to back off so that way the U.S. doesn't attack his country. But now he's coming out and saying they're rejecting all nuclear talks, and they won't even talk at all. So it makes you wonder, how close are they really to actually developing a nuke? Because what caused them to get so confident? So I'm going to say they're fully committed, and there's probably something concerning in the background as well, or maybe the Iranians just learned that the attack was imminent by the U.S. forces, and nothing's going to stop it, so they might as well keep going with their development. There's no telling, but I'm with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with the majority that the Iranians are completely committed to creating this nuclear weapon, because in their mind, they have to have it, be able to ensure that nothing really happens to them in the future, that they're able to control the domestic situation, and also they're able to threaten and terrorize really every single country that is not on good terms with Iran well on into the indefinite future. I would believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that the Iranians are entirely committed to creating this nuclear weapon, and will most likely see that this becomes a pressing issue for the United States because time is ticking. This isn't a kind of a diplomatic issue where you can sit back and come back to it in 5 years and see how it's going. They're going to create a nuclear weapon, and by that point, we're going to be largely powerless to do anything to them. So what we need to do, I will be entirely honest here, this isn't really even open for discussion. What the United States has to do is conduct an aggressive military operation to bomb Iranian nuclear research and development sites, and if necessary, move the military into Iran to overthrow the government and collapse largely the Iranian government apparatus that is supporting the nuclear research and weapons development projects inside the country. This is something that cannot pass, because if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, they are able to terrorize the entirety of the Middle East, which is a major oil manufacturer in the world. It's the only oil manufacturers outside of Russia and the United States that isn't directly within the control of a specific sphere already. This means that the Middle Eastern oil resources are a bit of a wild card, and whoever gets to control the region gets to control where the oil flows. And that means that it's a lot cheaper for other people to have economic growth, and it's a lot more expensive for others. That's how the United States largely controls the economic center of the world at this point that the Middle East has become, because the Chinese have to get most of their oil from the Middle East. And if we are able to access and control most of the oil resources within that area, and we're able to have good terms and good security arrangements with those countries, they're going to be a lot more apt to listen to what the United States says on who to sell to and who not to sell to. And we generally tell them not to sell to the Chinese and to prioritize American purchases first and foremost. That's also why, to explain a whole bunch of different kind of things that go on in the background, that's also why ramping up domestic production is great for price stability reasons here in the United States, but it's also detrimental in our terms of power projection around the world. Because if we start to produce so much domestic oil that we meet our domestic fuel consumption demands on a daily basis from domestic consumption alone, that means that we completely wean the Middle East off of their primary customer, and they're going to have to find a new one. And that new one would be the Chinese, because that's the only other country that consumes an exorbitant amount of fuel resources that isn't the Russian Federation. And also, there's a whole bunch of other complicated things to discuss with that, and we'll get to that in a minute. But nevertheless, if the Iranians get that nuclear weapon and they're able to terrorize anyone and everyone within the area, this may make a lot of those Middle Eastern countries start to deprioritize American oil purchase orders. And this means that they'll most likely start to move those oil purchase orders to the Chinese, because the Chinese will be looking for that oil, and the Iranians would be more than happy to help out China, because Iran is a part of the One Belt, One Road program for the Chinese for some while. So with this in mind, this is a serious concern to U.S. control over largely every single corner of the globe, and not only that, it would help our largest rival, the Chinese, to start growing their economic abilities far faster than they ever have been able to before. This requires us to take immediate action, not only because of that, but because the Iranian government is an incredibly unstable one, and the fact that they would have a nuclear weapon in their hands is a very scary one, and that would make me lose a good bit of sleep. Not only that, but it is in violation of the non-nuclear proliferation treaties that exist around the entirety of the world, and the Iranians are not supposed to have a nuclear weapon according to those treaties. So for those three reasons, and I hope those were very good explanations, we would not want to see the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, and we should ensure by all measures necessary that they never possess a nuclear weapon at any time, at any point, whether it be now or years in the future. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, because it's a fairly interesting kind of a little deal right there, and that's really putting it mildly. But nevertheless, moving on from that, and also some people said, "Oh, Alan Dulles, he's a little bit of a questionable guy." Well, geez, how in the world can you call him questionable? Look at his glasses. And also look at that
Man,
pipe.
he can't be questionable. He was appointed by Eisenhower, man. He appoints the best people, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, this guy, look at him. Look at that guy and tell me he's shady looking. I mean, this guy looks like your average accountant from the 1950s. I mean, he couldn't have done anything bad. I mean, what did he do? Let's see here. The Iranian coup d'etat, the Guatemalan coup d'etat. Let's see, he was the one who started the YouTube program. Let's see, they did that Project MK Ultra deal. That was just a small one.
Oh, he was the guy behind that. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, he was also the guy behind firing shells of LSD into that French village and seeing what happens.
Oh.
And let's see, what else? Oh yeah, also he was the one who actually largely planned the Bay of Pigs invasion and orchestrated it. But then after that, he was fired by Kennedy because it went poorly. But nevertheless, he's been behind a lot of things. I'm not going to lie. This is the guy, like, if you ever heard anything about the CIA and you're like, oh, the CIA, you know, that's a very questionable group. He was largely the one behind it. So, you know, don't ever look at those folks who look like accountants like this guy and go, he's harmless. This guy was the most effective and ruthless director of the CIA that ever existed, was this guy right here. So moving on from that. Also, Matthew, by the way, this was really what a lot of people call the CIA's Looney Tunes era, because they just did crazy stuff like, we're going to put a bomb in a conch shell in the middle of the Gulf, so that way when, let's see, what was his name? Fidel Castro goes scuba diving, he'll see it and pick it up and it'll blow up in his hand and kill him. Like, they planned that one under him. They also poisoned milkshakes that Fidel Castro was supposed to drink under Alan Dulles' control of the CIA. Man, like, the assassination attempts that they tried on Castro while Alan Dulles was the director of the CIA were quite truly like Looney Tunes level kind of deals. Like it was a crazy sort of a time for the CIA.
It really sounds like it, man. Honestly, I did not know this was the particular guy in charge of that MK Ultra project, but yeah, that sounds like the Looney Tunes era. Now, honestly, I wonder if the CIA is still doing stuff like this and they've gotten better at concealing it, or have they stopped this? I wonder, because it seems like this was like the wild and loose era of the CIA doing these crazy experiments. I wonder if they're still going on like that. I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know either. We're not that high up in the hierarchy to get that kind of clearance. I'm just kidding, everyone. But anyways, moving on from that, you know, they joke out there, folks, just to let y'all know, they joke, some people do, that we're in the CIA. And I have to say that we're certainly not in the CIA. That would be absolutely outrageous and ludicrous to believe that we are a part of the CIA. We are just good citizens of the United States of America and believe in our country greatly. But that doesn't require you to be a federal government agent working for the Central Intelligence Agency. That would be absolutely absurd. But moving on from that and out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, it is time for us to move on and back up into the area of Europe. Because before we get into the real juice, which is the Ukraine war news, we do have to point out that this fundraiser has reached a whopping $1.9 thousand, and it is only 600 away from reaching that fundraiser goal.
That's what I'm talking about.
Man, I'm telling you, we're getting close. I think we're going to make it. We're going to make it. I think we're going to absolutely make it tonight, because the Least Spring Army has never missed a fundraiser goal, ever, as a matter of fact. But moving on from that and into the country of Estonia, we have been able to hear big news today. Massive news. Real news. Long-lasting news. Estonia has cut off all Russian energy imports as of today. And we got to see it right here. Check this out.
Oh, man. That was some very aggressive energy. Did you see that trying to grab onto the pole before it left?
Man, look at that, man. The Russians were screaming, "No, Bliat, no!" and something like that. So they were losing like their last like $500,000 check every month. And they're like, "Damn it!" But still, that clip right there, this is actually the electrical station on the border being cut off. This was the Russian access to the Estonian market for them to sell their excess surplus electricity to Estonia and make a good bit of money off of it. That was shut off as of today. Here's an actual map showing y'all the Baltic synchronization transmission line, which comes from Russia and then transmits a large amount of power across Estonia. These have been shut off as of today, and Estonia is now going to be sourcing surplus electricity from their surrounding allies inside of NATO or inside of the European Union. This is a massive move because we're hearing that most likely, well, actually it's not most likely, tomorrow Lithuania and Latvia will also be cutting off their energy systems from the Russian Federation and sourcing their surplus electricity from European Union and NATO allies. This is a massive step forward, at least for the Eastern European area, as they are completely severing ties from this point forward and well on into the future from any kind of Russian energy access, which isn't really important for their strategic concerns. It's really more so important for Russian economic interests. Selling excess surplus electricity is actually a pretty lucrative market for nations like the Russian Federation, or really any country around the world. It actually makes a good bit of sense to sell off surplus electricity. In the current present day, this is starting to change though, there really isn't a way for us to store electricity, at least long-term in large amounts. And so for this reason, electricity has to be produced at the very moment it is to be consumed. And there's a whole kind of a process and a magic that goes on in the background that none of y'all really see or even really know about. Very few people would know a great deal about it because electricity is electricity. Who has to really care about it? It's always on. If you pay your meter, it will always be on. But there is a huge deal that goes in the background. Mind you, tonight's the Super Bowl inside the United States. That is a massive power drain, actually, on the U.S. energy grid when the Super Bowl is on. Because there is around, I believe, about 100 million TVs on inside the United States at that time. And usually throughout other periods on the energy grid, there's very rarely a time where that many TVs are on. And so with that in mind, the U.S. energy grid has to ramp up energy production to meet the normal consumption, but also to meet the massive influx of TVs that are turning on and also drawing power from the grid at this very moment tonight. And so they have to be able to forecast that and somehow guesswork out, because it's never an exact science, exactly how much power is needed. Too much, and they're wasting electricity that's not being used. Too little, and there will be rolling blackouts across the country in the middle of the Super Bowl. There's a very fine balance that has to be made, but sometimes that balance can be offset, for example, with Canada, who may or may not have been watching the Super Bowl tonight to a large sense. They are able to sell their excess electricity to the United States, lowering the demand, or really the output required by our domestic power plants here inside the United States. The same thing happens in every country around the world, like Estonia. And Estonia is a country that was buying a lot of their excess electricity, if not all of it, from the Russian Federation. The Russians make bank on that electricity sell to Estonia that happens pretty much every single day to larger or smaller degrees. But now, with the Estonians cutting them off, that money that the Estonians were sending to Russia to buy their electricity will be going to the surrounding allied neighbors like Finland or Sweden or another larger electrical grid that is traveling through the bottom of the Baltic, for example, a Polish electrical connection or a German one. This is going to be transferring that money and maintaining it within our Western sphere and denying the Russian Federation vital money that mostly would have gone to the Russian Federation's government that would have helped them to finance and continue on the war. So this is a huge step in the right direction for largely everyone within Eastern Europe, and hopefully we'll be able to see that the Western alliance, at least in Europe, is completely self-sufficient on its own and not really relying on the Russians for any kind of energy imports, whether it be any kind of combustible fuels or electricity or anything else in between. And so with that, Matthew, I do understand that we are talking about a little bit something else that might have some energy behind it, a little bit of the pep in the step, I suppose, and let's get right to it. Zelensky says that Putin is not planning for peace, and he's planning for more war, and this actually came on the cusp of the President of the United States saying that he got in a call today with Putin while on board, I believe it was Air Force One, and a lot of people are noticing that there wasn't really a lot said by the President of the United States. He was largely moot on what happened in the call, which is leading us to believe here on the channel that it must have not gone well, otherwise there would be much to be said about the call. Nevertheless, it appears that Zelensky is saying what we've largely been saying on this channel, that it appears that the Russian Federation has no intention on ending this war anytime soon, and the war will go on for some time from now. And a lot of people are putting in their opinions on this, and loads of people are believing that Putin is putting down that double down. He's getting on that Doug Dimmadome double down kind of a deal right here. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well? Is he doing the Doug Dimmadome down, or is he not doing that so much?
So I think Putin's giving them the shimmy. But let's see here. About 70% said yes, Putin is doubling down, and 18% said no, Putin will look for an exit, and only 9% said it seems like he's probably planning for more war, but not really sure. And I would say that just based on just looking at it from a neutral perspective, Putin is not looking for peace. He won't even negotiate with Ukraine, even though some people in the background are claiming that he wants to talk. He's doing the complete opposite. Zelensky even said on his nightly speech, he said that Russia's adding over 100,000 troops to their fighting efforts. They're building new divisions, and also they're even expanding their weapons production in addition to everything else they're doing, while also, once again, trying to involve Belarus in the situation as well, which is also going to cause a bit of an issue. So I would say Putin is definitely not looking for peace. And even though there's phone calls happening in the background, that's pretty much all it is. It's just talk and it's just phone calls. No progress has been made, and I don't think there probably will be any progress made for the foreseeable future, in my opinion. So I would say he's doubling down, and I'm with the 70%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I do believe that he is doubling down, and that is a fairly interesting thing. We're about to get into the war today, and it's not looking well for the Russians still. It looks like they're taking high losses, and most of their offensive plans are starting to fail once more because of Ukrainian counterattacks that are largely throwing these offensives off balance that were very fragile in the first place and very rare to actually succeed and highly likely to fail. There's a lot of things that are making this war seem ridiculous at this point for the Russians to keep it going, but it seems to me that Putin is adamant on keeping it going until the Russian Federation simply doesn't have a breath to breathe any longer as a nation. So I would say that Putin is most likely doubling down. That's probably why we didn't hear a lot about the phone call that happened in between the President of the United States today and the President of the Russian Federation, because nothing good probably came of it, and we're probably going to be seeing that there is no meaningful peace negotiations that are conducted anytime soon. It's been quite a while since the new president has become the president, and it doesn't look like the war is ending anytime soon. If anything, it actually looks like it might actually be ramping up into the next level, which many people have been wanting to avoid to some extent, including us. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And let's see here. Also, Matthew, I do think that that was a bit of a typo.
Yeah, that was a typo right there.
Man, you're like, only 400. I was like, wait a minute, we got like 2.1 in the system. We are only, by the way, y'all, about $432, actually $442 or something like that away from the fundraiser goal right now. So we are incredibly close to reaching goal, and I hope that we can reach it before the hour is even out. But moving on from that, And on into the remainder of the news. I got to be honest with you, I'm talking with so much energy tonight. It feels like my nasal system is about to just fall out because it's shaking the roof of my mouth so much talking like this. But it's still great to know. I got to tell you, Matthew, you know how you always say, man, like everyone's always said, man, the Enforcer is so loud in person. Man, I feel it. Like it actually shakes my like skull while I talk. Like no joke sometimes. But
man, like a built-in subwoofer in your mouth. That's kind of crazy.
You know, something like that. But anyways,
something like that. Yeah.
man, going to the club. Man, I'm just dang Nicholas Condor throwing a 250. Holy moly, we are only a $140 away. I think I'm not great at math. Oh, we're almost $100 away from the fundraiser goal at this point.
Moving fast all of a sudden. Look at that. You know, something I just realized. We're only about 50 minutes into the stream. It felt like it's been longer than that, but it's only 50 minutes and we're almost to goal. So we're actually on par with usual, even though the Super Bowl is running.
Man, I'm telling you, it's absolutely crazy to see, and I got to say that it is one hell of a thing to know that the fundraiser is just trucking on along incredibly fast. It's only $100 away, almost exactly at this point, and I got to say that that's absolutely incredible right there. And so, moving on from that and on into the little bit of news that we have from Germany. We did get to hear of a little incident that happened today, and it was one of intrigue. And BC Skyman just threw an 100, and we have hit the goal.
No, we're 5 short.
Oh, dang it.
We're so close, man. We're so close, man. It's literally one more donation, and it's over. I'm waiting for it. Somebody's going to do it. Someone's going to put in the 5.
It's so Jovic. Come on.
So Jovic. Oh, man. Let's go, man. Come on. I mean, $5, man. I mean, come on. I mean, what's going on? I mean,
whoa, what do you mean,
dragging out longer than I thought. This is dragging out long.
Oh, there we go. We got it. Oh,
we hit the goal. Igor.
Let's go, baby.
Goal smashed, baby.
We did it. We hit the goal. Look at that again. Look at that.
52 minutes. 52 minutes. We're still on par with usual, man. Even though the Super Bowl is running, I'm very proud of that. The LSA is coming through no matter what.
Read it and weep. Oh, my Lord. A 333 just came in. Holy moly, we're now almost up to $3,000 on the fundraiser. Absolutely crazy. But still, I love to see it. It's great to see. I'm just absolutely blown away. Flabbergasted even. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that dead on the nail again. I mean, just an amazing thing right there. The fundraiser is still going strong, even stronger than ever before. And it is a truly incredible thing. Massive thanks to everyone who supported the fundraiser tonight. A massive thanks to everyone who's been here so far tonight. We've actually reached a peak so far of 9.7 thousand people in the middle of the Super Bowl. We actually expected far less than that. But oh my Lord, just chilling.
Whoa.
Oh my Lord, another 100. Holy moly.
Damn.
That's absolutely crazy right there. Absolutely crazy. I got to say, we've now hit $3,000 nearly on the fundraiser. What a fundraiser. This has actually been an impressive one so far tonight. And I got to give a huge shout out to y'all once again for making it this far. But to make sure that y'all get a little bit of extra news as a bit of an Easter egg, I suppose, although it wasn't our news cycle, unknown UAVs were spotted observing Ukrainians training on Patriot systems in Germany. 6 incidents were recorded in January. Attempts to shoot them down, including electronic warfare, failed. Russia is the main suspect, with drones possibly launched from ships in the North or Baltic Seas. Fairly interesting.
Here's my question, though, about this. If these drones are so advanced and they're allegedly Russian, then how come we're not seeing those on the battlefield, but yet they're showing up over some equipment here that's belonging to NATO?
That's because Russia is super secret and special, because Putin is Mr. Spy Chief, you see, and he has ultimate trick, Matthew. While hundreds of thousands of Russians die in Ukraine, they are simply but disguise to hide true nature of Russian Federation. You see, the war in Ukraine makes everyone think Russia's weak, which would never help them on the diplomatic stage, mind you, if they look weak. But nevertheless, it all falls into Putin's grand plan, because while everyone thinks Russia's weak, bam! Super ultra 4K HD drone pops up over northern Germany, blade, and scares the shit out of everyone in the world, blade. It's a great thing, and then they really know that Russia is super strong and can do whatever they want, blade. Although their Oreshnik missile has a 50-50 chance of blowing up before it hits its target, blade. But nevertheless, that's what makes Russia great. They know how to fake it so that way they can break it, play it. But anyways, moving on from that, I don't know, Matthew. I don't know why they would think that, to be entirely honest, because it doesn't make any sense. It's like Russia can't even really fight the war. They're deploying donkeys now to the front, and then we got to say, oh, look, it's a super drone. It must be a Russian super drone. We can't shoot it down. We can't hack it. Oh my God. It's like, that makes no sense, like, on any level.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. Honestly, if it were anybody, I would say it'd probably be China, if anybody. Maybe Russia's being supplied with drones being supplied from China, but I doubt that Russia's coming up with it because, like we're saying, they would be using it in Ukraine right now, and they're not. So where's all this high-tech stuff just magically coming from? Just like the closet in Russia or something?
I have no clue. I guess it's just, I guess they got that stuff in the back, you know. Like it's like whenever
check the back.
it's like whenever Karen comes into the store and they're like, "Do you have Fruit Loops of a limited edition from 2009?" And you're like, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, ma'am, but that was discontinued in 2009. Can you check in the back? Make sure you got it." And then you're like, yeah, sure. And then you go back there and you just hang out for like 5 minutes and, you know, scroll on your phone and then come back out and go, "Sorry, we don't have it," because you just didn't have it anyways. It's kind of like that, I guess, with the Russians. You know, Matthew, they're like, "Do we have great drones to use against Ukraine?" No. Well, can you check in the back? And then they go back there and they find the super drone and then they're like, "Oh, we found it. Could you give it to us?" No. "We're going to go look at Ukrainians in Germany, like peeping toms or something, see you." You know, and then they just wander off with it, I guess. I don't know. Like,
I guess or something. It's just I just don't know where they'd be getting it from, to be honest, unless they're receiving it from a foreign country. But surely they're not developing it.
yeah, I don't think that those are Russian. Probably, maybe Chinese, maybe even something else. It could just be interested people from nearby. You know, it could be those elusive hobbyists that were all over the New England area back in the United States last year. And then we got the truth. I love that, y'all. I just got to be honest with this here. Under the last administration, there was the statement, "They're hobbyists." And then the incoming president said, "We're going to reveal the secrets. We're going to tell the country the truth." And that would make you think that the story would be different. And then no, they come out again and then they say it was hobbyists again. And it's like, okay, well, that was kind of a, I don't know why the hell you would say it like that. It just made me confused. But Nerdo and Andrew Barbo threw in $100 donation each. Holy moly. We're now
What are we
up
up
to
to now?
3.3.
We're up to $3,273 raised. We're so far above goal now. I can't even count it.
Dude, I can't even do math, much less count. Like, it's like, that is an amazing number. Absolutely incredible right there.
I love to see it. I tell you what, the LSA is coming through, baby.
Man, I'm telling you, let's go, baby. But also, once again, getting to that, like, I don't know about y'all, and I'm not speaking about this on a political level. That's why I had to make sure to, you know, just say it straight as it was. Don't y'all find that a little goofy? Like, there's more to that than it being hobbyist drones. I think everyone knows that at this point. But, you know, if you're going to say that you're going to tell the public the truth, and then they come out and give you the same answer as the last administration did, it's like, is anyone really even appeased with that? Like, I know I'm not, because it's obvious that's obviously not the answer. But anyways, if I continue to talk about that, our handlers will be displeased, and Anthony Studebaker will not allow that. So we are going to be moving on from the whole New England drone thing and talking about that, because this kind of looks almost like a similar instance, but with the Ukrainians instead. And also, Matthew, I just realized something, Matthew, looking at northern Germany, that there is a canal that passes through here, and I've just never mentioned it. And someone brought it up and said that it was more impressive than the Panama Canal. And I'd say maybe. I mean, you know, if you want to say it's more impressive, I mean, maybe. It's kind of like the Panama Canal, but not so much. It's made over incredibly flat terrain. I mean, there's like no hills in this area of Germany, but this is it. I mean, you know, if you wanted to see the canal, this is it. I don't really know if incredibly large ships pass through. No, they appear to be of a smaller variety. Probably because the canal's depth doesn't really allow for incredibly large vessels. So it's kind of like the Panama Canal, just smaller and built on flatter ground. Still impressive, though. It's a fairly long canal. It goes all the way from Kiel over here. Here's the entrance to the canal on this side, and it goes all the way over to Brunsbüttel on the other side of Germany, and then it opens up, I believe, if I'm correct, if I can find the name of this river, the Elbe River, and really the mouth of it, and near to the North Sea.
I gotta say, that water in that canal is just nasty looking. That is the brownest looking water, and it looks like the river Thames around London, really.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, man. That just kind of looks like the Mississippi River, but smaller.
Yeah, it kind of does, honestly. That water is nasty looking, though. It's so brown.
Man, let's go show everyone the Mississippi River if y'all have never seen it before. It's nasty. It's just
This one is nastier, but that water moves fast though. Like if you've ever driven over this bridge right here, that water is floating so fast. Like, if you got in that water, I feel like it'll sweep you away quick.
Man, the Mississippi River gives Willy Wonka's Chocolate River a run for its money. I mean, this thing is just like, oh my lord. It's really it's a nasty river. Like, it's a nasty river because of a load of things to get washed into it. Like, you all don't know this. All of the nitrogen-based fertilizer in the country largely ends up in the Mississippi River at some point because of wash-off. And most of the let me go show you all the Mississippi River and its tributaries. You'll find this really interesting, I'm sure. Mississippi River and tributaries. So tributaries are smaller rivers, creeks, and streams that all flow into the Mississippi River, or any river for that matter. It's pretty much the way how all the water combines together into one big river to go out to the sea. So let me see here if I can show y'all. Here we go. This is the Mississippi / Atchafalaya River Basin right here to show y'all how big the Mississippi River's actual coverage area is.
Interesting. That's fascinating to see.
Yeah, everything in yellow, all the water that falls within this area in yellow, somehow, some way, all of it ends up in the Mississippi River by the time it's exiting into the Gulf of Mexico. So every single, and this is also the big thing about the Mississippi River. Most of this area out here is what some people would call the Midwest. Technically, that's actually just the West. Most of our agriculture in this country is done within that area. And most of that is heavily propped up by nitrogen-based fertilizers. And so the nitrogen-based fertilizers are sprinkled out in pellets most of the time onto the fields. And then the rain comes through and it washes out that nitrogen. That nitrogen then goes into its local creeks and streams, then goes into its larger river system, like the Platte River here as an example, then into the Missouri, and then eventually into the Mississippi. So by the time that the Mississippi River gets all of the nitrogen from all of the surrounding areas, the water actually has an abnormally high amount of nitrogen in it, which is toxic for the fish and wildlife that live around the river or use the river in some way, shape, or form. And it's been a bit of an issue lately because it's actually starting to kill off a decent population of fish that once lived in the river. And so that's been a bit of a concern for many, is that it's starting to kill off a lot of the wildlife that have to do with anything surrounding the Mississippi River. But here's the problem. Either we start cutting back on the nitrogen-based fertilizers that are used throughout most of the country's agriculture, which would start to greatly diminish crop production, which would start to raise food prices around the United States, even if we started to cut back on the government giving out pretty much checks to people to destroy their crops to artificially inflate food prices so that way farmers aren't going broke. Or we allow most of the wildlife and fish in the river to die, and then we deal with whatever ecological consequences could come from that, pretty much surrounding this entire area in yellow. So it's a bit of an issue. We don't really know how to fix it, and either way we fix it, there's going to be some sort of an unfortunate consequence of that action. So we are going to see what happens with that. And also, the Asian carp, also, Soul said, if it's Asian carp, then we are good. That's also the problem as well. There's a lot, and whenever anyone throws that in, I'm like, oh yeah, like anyone throws in an extra point, it's like, oh yeah, good point. So also another thing is that there's this invasive fish that now lives practically within the entire Mississippi River Basin called the Asian carp, which is a bastard of a fish, mind you. You would think that they look normal, but these things are actually invasive and incredibly territorial, and not only that, they kill off a lot of the local fish as well. They could live in extremely toxic conditions, which makes them suited to the river. So while other natural native fish populations have a rough time living in the Mississippi, these things thrive a lot.
Those are the ones that jump out of the water. I've seen like videos of these things jumping out of the water, just like you seen that picture right there. These things are like crazy populated over there, like very much.
Yeah, and also another interesting thing, because of these fish, I'll go show you something in Chicago. There is an actual lock and canal system that was made throughout the area of Chicago that leads into the Great Lakes. They want to stop because there's a lot of fishing that goes on in the Great Lakes from major industry fishers. They want to stop these carps from going into the Great Lakes because if they get in there, they're going to kill everything. So what they do is that the Army Corps of Engineers actually has a station at the lock leading into, well, at multiple locks leading into Chicago, that has a giant electrified net pretty much going across it. It has so much voltage in it that if you touch it, you'll get killed. And its whole purpose is that if a Asian carp runs into the thing, it goes and kills it. So that way it doesn't make it into into the Great Lakes. Another thing is that this thing is about a football field long, so they can't jump over it, because if they jump over it, if somehow they learn to do that, they jump over the first wire and fall onto another one, and then they get killed again. So that's generally stopping them from getting into the Great Lakes. But if that thing ever goes down, and some of those fish, just maybe a couple of dozen of them, make it into the Great Lakes, the fisheries of the Great Lakes might get destroyed. Just to put that out there, how serious of a consequence it could be if those electric nets inside of those canals go out for some reason.
That's crazy, man. It's like their whole ecosystem relies on that fry a fly tennis water net thing that fries flies when you swack it at them and stuff like that. It's like the whole thing is relying on just a electrified net. That's kind of interesting.
Man, it's a fairly interesting thing right there. But nevertheless, I hope that y'all enjoyed that story well. That's at least my understanding of it. And moving on from that, another interesting thing, speaking of which, is the news, which we have to get back into because that was a rabbit hole. I don't even know how we got into it, but we got into it, and I hope that was interesting. But nevertheless, moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have been able to get some fairly interesting news out of two different areas in Ukraine today, of the Kursk offensive, which is still ongoing, and the Pokrovsk counteroffensive, which just started yesterday. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we take a quick moment to recognize the top donors of the stream and also answer a couple of questions that a lot of y'all have had, because tonight's a live chat segment, and it's a fairly fun time because anyone can ask a question. No one even has to throw in a super chat or wait in a queue to be able to get a question answered. Just throw one in, and there's a good chance it might be answered. So with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's jump into our top donors of the night. We got a pretty big list tonight, actually. Even with the Super Bowl going on, it's still going strong with the top donors. So our biggest one of the night was at 333 from, I presume, Howell Rose, but it came in as anonymous for some reason, like it usually does. But huge shout out to Hal for that 333, the largest one of the night. Also, big shout out to Nicholas Condor, who put in a 250, along with Howell Rose, who put in another $100 donation. And then we had a 100 from some guy called The Enforcer, as well as Isaiah, Activista, as well as Joe's RV Home Turtle, as well as BC Skyman. Actually, two of them from BC Skyman. Then we had a 100 from Just Chillin' and Andrew Barbro, as well as a 100 from Nerdo. Then we had a 75 from Purple Gerbil, as well as Rocky, and then several $50 donations, the first one being from John King, as well as Bill Thomas, Dad Good, Juana McIntosh, Nightmare Before Christmas, Susan Janowski, Cliff H., as well as Greg Carrier, and then we had a 100 come in from John McKinnon. And real quick, I'm scrolling through. I'm making sure I didn't miss a single one of them, and it looks like we are caught up. So a huge shout out to everybody tonight for making that possible and helping us to smack the goal and go almost $1,000 above it at this point. We're sitting at $3,435. So very good to see. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, an amazing thing that we've been able to raise nearly $3.5 thousand tonight for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. Truly incredible. And I got to give a huge shout out and a thanks to all of the top donors who have been supporting this fundraiser tonight and helping it to get to where it is. But we also got to extend a massive thanks to all of those unsung folks that we cannot call out your names that put in less than $50. There are hundreds of people who have made this fundraiser possible tonight, and without each and every single one of y'all doing y'all's part, whether it's big or small, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality, and we wouldn't be able to make sure that these fundraisers continue to support American and Western interests around the globe, wherever those may be. Y'all are all responsible for that. Every single one of y'all. And I'm going to thank y'all massively once again for being here tonight, and also once again supporting the fundraiser, because y'all are helping out massively in Ukraine where others do not. And so what? So I hope that does address that incredibly well. A huge thanks to you all so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the live chat questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so grabbing our 3 live chat questions for our first question segment. Real quick, a quick reminder. If you have a question for us, no super chats tonight. It's a Sunday night fundraiser stream, so we don't do those. So you can tag @Enforcer Matt in the live chat and add your question behind it, and I'll add it to our spreadsheet, and we might have enough time to get around to most of them tonight. So with that, we are now going to move into our first one after we recognize a quick donation from Joe's RV Home Turtle. Once again, he threw in another $65 donation and brought us over the $3,500 mark. Huge shout shout out to Joe's RV Home Turtle for that support to the fundraiser, that is. But Enforcer, I heard you say something. What do you want to say?
Oh, I didn't say anything. I think you're imagining things. Ah,
For real, or are you just joking?
Oh no, I'm like serious. Like I didn't
Oh,
say
okay.
anything. But please go ahead.
I'm hearing stuff. I'm hearing stuff, man. Like you occasionally hear me say something. I'm not even talking. Like I don't know what it is. We're hearing voices, man. Voices,
Dude,
man. Oh my god.
It's the amount of coffee we're drinking. I mean, like, dude, if people drank the amount of coffee that we were drinking, I think these days people would be seeing like the Hat Man or something like that at this point. Like it's.
Man, I tell you, and the crazy thing is, though, I had no coffee. I'm just high on stress. But anyways, jumping into our live chat questions here. Our first one goes to Joe Leslie, who says, will the end of the Ukraine conflict signal the beginning of the end of the UN?
I don't think so. The UN has survived and flourished through everything. It's a completely pointless organization that has no purpose. It cannot do anything. Nothing matters that happens in the UN, and I just cannot stand the UN. Nevertheless, despite my absolute distaste and dislike of the United Nations, it will continue to survive well on into the future. It's that kind of a deal. Like, I don't really know how to explain that incredibly well. The UN just survives through everything. They did stupid stuff in Vietnam. They did stupid stuff in the invasion of Afghanistan by the Soviet Union. They've done stupid stuff forever, and they just survive through it all because every country in the world knows that the UN is useless, but nevertheless, they want somewhere to send their goofiest people to New York City to a building that is on this side of the river right here. Here's the United Nations building. So that way, they can go and stand up in front of a crowd of other countries and yap about nothing and really get nothing achieved. But they still like it just for the fact that it exists. And you can also see the United Nations building right here. We can also see a statue of a revolver. What kind of a revolver is that? Like,
It's a twisted up revolver, that's for sure. You know, I'm sure there could be a Mythbusters episode on whether or not that could work or not if they were still around.
you know, that would be great if they could. Also, I hate the United Nations like building. Like it's just so corporate looking. It looks like Walmart's United Nations building. Like if Walmart or Amazon made one, it would look like this. It's just so lame and mundane looking. Like look
It's
at
kind
this.
of commie. Like I'm not gonna lie. Well, I'm kind of commie, kind of not. The commies really weren't into like really elaborate like paintings on the wall like that. I don't think.
Oh
But
no, they were. Yeah,
oh, they were.
yeah, they were.
Oh, interesting. Well, also, what's that thing sitting in the middle of the circle right there? Is that like one of those eyes wide shut open things or something?
I think it's some sort
Or
of
is
a
that the
camera
camera?
boom. Yeah, it's a camera boom that they can remotely spin around to whoever's talking, I believe.
Ah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was like, it looked like a ghoul standing in the middle.
Man, don't let some guy called Alex get his name on this. He's gonna be talking about the globalists. They got a secret guy sitting in the middle. He's telling everyone everything, something like that. But this is just a lame place. Like nothing about this even feels inspired. It's like what is cool about the UN? Like I don't know, these weird ass paintings. Like I don't know. It's like I don't even know what the hell this is. This guy's wearing a thong. Like,
He's wearing a thong, and what's up with man? What? I'm not even gonna make a comment on that though.
Let's see here. They're all wearing thongs. What's up with this? Like, it's a universal
They're
thing.
nudists.
I suppose. I mean, I guess. But let's see here. It also appears that they covered it up with sheets. This was when the mob was doing a hit, and they had to, cover up the. But let's see here.
They had a little water leak from the ceiling or something. They had to call in Servpro.
No, man, they said, "Hey, Vinny, come in. We got to go to the UN for something." What is it? Oh, it's nothing. We just need to talk to you. That's all. And then they walked him up there, and he went up there, and he saw no one in the building. He went, "Oh, no!" And then they got him or something. It's like,
I heard you wanted this room painted red, yeah?
But look at this. What is this? A UN flag? Something about Haiti. Well, if the UN's needed anywhere, one of the few haces is actually Haiti, maybe. But I haven't seen them putting barbecue down, so.
Does China have their plaque on the wall in here yet? Oh, what the hell? What the hell's that guy doing sitting there? What the hell? Man, I don't know. What's he doing to stare at the cameraman like that?
I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. What else? That's just sad looking.
Oh, now that is commie right there. Just a straight up commie picture right here. But where's China's plaque on the wall? Because I've heard that China has a lot of sway in here. Does Russia have a plaque too? What in the world is that?
I don't know. That one's a mystery. I'm not gonna lie, dude. Most of the artwork in this building, it's like I don't like it. Like, it just doesn't look... What the hell is this?
That's
Like,
a telephone pole boat.
I don't know. What is this? Like, I just don't... Like, look at this painting. What are these? Like, what, like, why in the world does it look like death and suffering is the like, motif of every painting in the building? Like, I don't know, y'all. I'm not really vibing with this place, I'll be honest with y'all. It's just not my kind of a deal. But the UN will survive, because the UN survives everything. And also, what is this? Oh, that's the statue.
It's called nonviolence.
I'm sure this really helped to curb violence in the world. You know, it's like I don't think there's any violence. The statue was made and wars ended around the world forever and evermore and would never happen again. Amen.
You know what would have been better is if they put a picture of like all the dictators in the world like on their knees crying like because of getting taken down instead of putting literally a weapon up there. It's like the weapon wasn't going around causing the chaos. It was the people behind the weapon causing the chaos. It's like they're sitting there like, oh, that weapon that it did some dirty deeds. It's like no, not the weapon. It was the person.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. I got to tell y'all, I don't like artwork where it's like, oh, you know, let's end violence. It's like that artwork's doing nothing to end it. Like, you know, like I hate to tell y'all, the Banksy paintings aren't really stopping wars. Like it's like what are they doing? You know, it's like I don't really get that kind of stuff. It's like, you know, it's a great sentiment, sure, but it's like, you know, for people to be like, wow, so profound. It's like, well, did it stop a war? I mean, did that make a treaty get ratified or something? It's like, no, then it doesn't really mean anything to me as far as furthering peace. And on top of that, it's like, you know, well, we'll just leave it there. I won't rabbit hole on that too much because we still have more questions to get to. This is the first question of the segment, and I'm rabbit holing like crazy. But nevertheless, I hope that does answer the question well for you. And nevertheless, we are on to the second to last question of this segment.
All right, so this one goes to Lawrence Mead, who says, Enforcer Matt, should we give Ukraine an F-35 to combat test?
No. Like this, sorry. Like I'm all for supporting Ukraine, but they are never getting anything that could compromise national security if somehow secrets were given away about it, or if it ended up being shot down and it ended up falling into the hands of the Russians. I would say absolutely not. We know that the F-35 would do well simply because it is the best. So I would say that is a nice idea, but for national security reasons, I would 100% not be behind that kind of a move. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the last question in the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the remainder of the news.
Honestly, I'm kind of shocked. A lot of people are actually against giving Ukraine an F-35. Like, it's kind of shocking to one aspect and kind of not shocking to another. I'm glad everybody's on the same page on that one, because giving them our top fighter like that would definitely not be a great idea, because if it's captured, that would be terrible. But anyways, jumping on to our last question here. This one goes to Tony Lunatic, who says, do you think the Israelis will use their new Moab on Iran?
Well, I mean, usually the Moabs are a little hard to use, like large bombs like that. I believe they're what's called parachute-dropped bombs, so I'll explain how they work a little. So with a C-130, they'll load these things up into the back of them, and they'll fly them off in the C-130. Once they're over the target, they'll open up the back cargo doors, which has a kind of like a... let me see if I can show you the inside of the C-130. Oh, look at this, an in-air refueling. That is really cool, of a Black Hawk. That is incredibly cool, actually. But anyways, let me see if I can show you the inside of this thing. Let's see here. Oh, come on now. There's got to be a picture of the inside. Oh, come on now. Oh, come on. Like, they don't have a picture of the inside. You've got to be kidding me. They ripped me off here. But anyways, the inside of the C-130 has these little rails in the floor that allow for them to be able to deploy a parachute out of the back, and the drag of the parachute drags the bomb out with it. And then the bomb free falls onto its target and explodes. Problem is, you really can't use these kinds of massive bombs like that unless you have complete air superiority. I mean, there can't be anything on the ground to threaten the C-130, because the C-130 could get shot down easy, and the whole mission could go south if it gets shot down with a Moab on it. So, with that in mind, Not really so, because Iran does have some air defense, and this thing would be a sitting target for any kind of air defense. You would literally have to wipe out every single thing that could fire at the C-130, or an Israeli one for that matter, for them to fly a bomb like that into Iran and drop it on anything. So I generally would say it would be a neat idea if they had complete air superiority, but generally you never have that in the modern world, or especially in these quick strike missions like the Israelis have been doing against Iran. So it would be a fairly hard thing to be able to pull off, dropping a Moab like that on them, because that plane would probably get shot down before it could drop the bomb. So with that, I hope that does address that well. It's still a neat idea, though. It's just that I don't think it would work because of the air defense reasons. But I hope that does answer that well. And with that, it is time for us to get on into the remainder of the news. Moving on into the Kursk Oblast, we did get to see that the Ukrainians were putting it down on the Russians, and we got to hear the hit of a drumstick right there, bringing Matthew back to the old days. We can also see a shadow right there.
Oh, a shadow.
I guess you could say that that's a Shadow Wizard Money Gang. We love casting spells. The
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Real trap. Walk with your boys.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
He did it again.
I had to, man. You said the whole line. I had to do it.
We make it look easy.
Walk with your boys.
Real
I'm not
trap.
doing it a third time. I'm not doing it a third time.
Oh, and there's
someone said in the live chat, Neil Vizanot, he said, if the F-35 is so great, why are they falling out of the sky? I wonder about that. I wonder if it's like pilot error or what it is. And we're not really being told the answer to that question, but we are seeing some problems with the F-35. We've seen one of them hovering above a runway, and then suddenly the pilot ejected and the whole thing crashed. We also saw the one crash the other day that just literally plummeted toward the earth. So I don't know really, honestly, what's going on with them, to be straight up.
Look, folks, planes crash all the time, all right? Ships sink all the time. So it's going to happen. Accidents are going to happen. If anything moves, there's a chance it'll crash. And practically every single thing on Earth has crashed. I mean, if the F-15 is so great and good, how come there is, I think, 50 incidents of crashes involving F-15s? The same question could be asked for them all. And the real answer is, no matter how great the plane, no matter how good the pilot, there will be a crash eventually. So with that, I hope that does answer that well. And moving on from that, we also get to see that a little arms depot was shelled by the Ukrainians and exploded prolifically. Sounds like Orville Reichenbacher across the street over there. Rev up those fryers because we've got some hot dogs to grill. Aw, man. Not now. We'll wait for you.
Aw, man.
Aw, man, I get no respect around here and I can't even do voices. Aw, man. Moving on from that, though, we did get to see a Russian counterattack being repelled, and apparently it's a little too spicy, so we'll move on from that one. That's a spicy meatball. Moving on from that and on into other location unknowns, we did get to see that the Russians are apparently possibly being issued camels now. We don't know if this is Photoshop, I want to make that clear, but this picture did start to surface today, and I was like, wow, this is a camel. And it looks like it might be in Ukraine, but we don't really know. Do y'all think this is real, or do y'all think this isn't real? What do you think, Matthew? Cap or no cap?
I'm going to say this is cap, honestly. Something about it doesn't look like with the proportions.
I'm going to say it's probably cap. I still wanted to show it to y'all because it was just interesting, but you never know. Maybe it's real, maybe it isn't, but we'll see one day. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a Ukrainian soldier with a bionic hand. They call him the $6 Million Man.
Terminator.
And that's
Tesla. What the hell is he talking about?
Man, you better watch out, man. Next thing you know, he might extend all the fingers in that hand and give out that Roman salute, as they called it. But
Uh-oh.
Tesla, I mean, just sneak the lightning away. I gotta say, please, like, don't do anything to us. But moving on from that, we also get to see a T-34 today. It's not Victory Day parade time on May 9th, so this is just a T-34 wandering around Russia. We do not know where it is or why it is even out here. You very, very rarely see them anymore. But there is a T-34 right there. Also, I think
That's music or something, I think.
Oh, that's scary. But still, we can see the T-34 right there. Moving on from that, we also get to see the Russian casualty report.
Oh, man. They got one Bobcat today. It looks like it's gone down a bit. Well, only one Bobcat, but these losses are getting insane, man. Tell us more. Tell us more.
Soon they're about to hit a milli. They're about to say a big thank you to Millie. I guess you could say that is a general milli because it's the first milli that we've ever seen. But nevertheless, it is time to get into the casualty report. I do have to say that unfortunately, we do not have Miss Disa with the record keeping in the corner, which is a great help to us every day in extrapolating these numbers. But as President Zelensky, I will guide you through the numbers and let you know how bad the Russians are doing. 1,460 Russians and NUKE bastards were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. It was a great day for Ukraine. We also got to see that 20 armored personnel carriers were destroyed, less of a threat for grain from Ukraine. Also, 127 supply trucks were also destroyed over the past 24 hours. They will not be supplying anyone with nothing. 11 main battle tanks also destroyed. 24 artillery pieces knocked out. 83 drones obliterated. One plane shot down. That was a pretty cool one. It was a trick shot near Toretsk. We actually have it on film. Very nice. And one Bobcat skid steer. It was a great day for Ukraine, and it's time to show you why it was a great day, getting on into the war footage itself.
But moving on from that, we are now going to be moving on over into the northern area. We actually didn't get any video or picture evidence from the Vovchansk front, so we're going to be skipping past that one today. And moving on up into Kupiansk, we did get to see that the Ukrainians were hitting some Russian forces with the 3rd Brigade today, and check this out.
Oh, and they're smashing them good. They're bringing houses and roofs down, too. Look at that.
And holy moly! And someone just said our political leanings came through on our position on Iran. It's like our position on Iran has been the same for 2 years. Get your head screwed on straight. Jeez.
I think if you say anything these days, like if you say, I'm for Ukraine, oh, your political leanings came through strong on that one. If you say, oh, no, I'm pro, like, making sure that Iran can't develop a nuke. Oh, you got to be this type of winger to be that person. It's crazy, man. Like, everything's a political take these days.
Yeah, like you could say, I like peanut butter and jelly, and someone's going to go, oh, that's code. He's, and then they're going to, like, say you're a part of a party. It's like, geez, folks, I got my own opinions here. Man, like, geez, you can tell how someone drinks the Kool-Aid because they think if you say anything at all, you have it's a political leaning, especially if it doesn't agree with what they've been told by their party to believe. Like, I beg of those people. I beg of that one that we just had to delete their comment from. I don't think they were banned. Please get a brain. Like, I beg of you, because everything is not political. So with that, we are going to be moving on from this clip here and on into our next one, a little bit further down the lines, and into Seversk, where we did get to see a Ukrainian air unit in action in the combat zone. Now, this is actually a very interesting clip, and we're going to pause it and show y'all why. That is an F-16.
Oh, really?
Yes, this is the first time ever that an F-16 has been seen in the active combat air zone, and not only that, it appears to have an air-to-ground loadout because it looks like it has some kind of a GBU or some other kind of a bomb on one of the inner pylons on the wings, showing that this thing is actually conducting air-to-ground sorties while this video was going on.
That's crazy, honestly.
Yeah, that's actually incredibly crazy and really cool to know that this is the first time we've ever seen this. Like, we've never seen an F-16 in actual combat use until today. This is the first video proof that we have ever gotten of the Ukrainian F-16 in operations in air-to-ground roles near to the front lines. So an incredibly cool thing to see. And so now that y'all have seen that, we're going to let the video play in full so that way y'all can really see the speed of this F-16 as it was ripping along the ground below. Woo! Man, that thing was roaring right there. Really impressive stuff. But moving on from that and down towards Bakhmut, we also got to see that the Russians are having such a problem with drones. They've constructed a 2-kilometer-long anti-drone net on both sides of the road to stop Ukrainian drones from being able to slam Russian vehicles down on. So what they do not know here is that they've actually created a corridor to where trucks can't veer off the road and try and at least dodge a drone that's coming at them head on. So if the drones are coming head on, you're screwed. But if they're coming in from the side, you're not. But the Ukrainians will just adapt their anti-vehicle tactics with their drones here in this area and knock them out still. So that really did nothing. But we can see that it gave the Russians a false sense of security.
That guy's very tactical with cutting that net.
And we can see here, they're showing where this is, the Russians at least. And we can see it's the road out of Bakhmut, which they called Armtsinsk, because of the Russian naming of it, and going to Chasiv Yar. And we can see them right here looking to deploy a wire. It's actually a fiber optic drone right there, and showing off an oil refinery defense system, which does not work, by the way, because if y'all noticed, even in this demonstration, the fake drone actually ended up pushing the net back and actually ended up hitting the refinery, so that was a failure, and that was in the middle of the demonstration for the product. So it doesn't really seem like their faith in nets is really holding everything together. Netting it in, I suppose. But he is giving them a false sense of security, and I guess that's all that counts, right?
I guess it's all that counts. They're setting this place up like a Topgolf facility.
Okay, everyone, let's try to hit the golf ball. Wait a minute, that was a bomb! And then it like blows up or something. But anyways, moving on from that and down to Toretsk, we did get to see the Ukrainian 28th Mechanized Brigade repelling a Russian assault today in short order. There goes the BMP-1 right there. Pieces went flying. Oh, and they got another one, another BMP-1. And here comes another one. This is an unknown BMP, and another one as well. And another one. Man, I feel like DJ Khaled out here. And another one. We also get to see another one. We the best! But we see them just slamming them. Left and right. We went to Topgolf recently, and they changed the rules of the games. And I wasn't happy because the scoring was different. And also, they made it to where the ball doesn't actually have to go into the net. It literally could just, like, glide right by the side, and you still get points for it, which I think is kind of ridiculous because I felt like me and Matthew were just wrongfully getting points when we shouldn't be getting points, and I was like, what the hell's going on? But anyways, moving on from that. Oh, I don't know what's going on down there, but it looks like a little fire. Braised orc, anyone? Oh, man, they're cooking down there. Call it Colonel Sanders, because that looks like a pressure cooking. But we also got to see an Su-25 getting shot down near Toretsk recently as well. Watch this. Oh, right down into the ground. Holy moly. That one's a goner.
The F-35's crashing, but damn. Have they seen this boiler?
Whoa. Look at that toiler. Toiling in hell, like something like that. But the Su-25 in front of it is now popping flares, hoping that it also does not get shot down.
Wow, what kind of camera are they using, man? They're zoomed in like it's a television camera or something.
Dude, they got like NBC out here with like the news camera or something. Like, dude, they had this trick shot set up. But moving on from that, we do have to talk about a little question that's been asked of all of y'all here. Ukraine starts a new offensive in Pokrovsk after consistent gains in Russia's Kursk region. And are the Russians caught lacking? And it looks like a lot of people are saying yes, the Russians have been caught lacking in 4K Ultra HD. Some people are saying that no, Russia is holding the stalemate. Others are saying it's somewhat but only temporary, and others have been unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so it looks like 50% of the audience said yes, Russia is on the back foot now, while 20% said no, Russia is holding the stalemate steady, and 19% said somewhat but only temporary that Russia is slipping. And I would have to say, considering the fact that the Ukrainians just started a brand new offensive in Pokrovsk, which is an area which the Russians were desperately trying to scrap for more gains, it sounds like they're going to get pushed back in Pokrovsk, and now in Russia's Kursk region, they're also getting pushed back as well after Ukraine started yet another offensive in that region. And it sounds like the Ukrainians are still making gains and the Russians are still struggling to hold them off. So they're bringing in the North Koreans to try to stop it, but the North Koreans, being very ill-equipped, are really not stopping it either. So I would say Russia is certainly slipping, and I'm with the 51%. They're on the back foot. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I do believe that the Russians are on the back foot. It appears that they have been caught lacking in 4K Ultra HD, simply due to the fact that their offensive around Pokrovsk is overextended. We'll show that to y'all here in a minute. But also due to the fact that the defenses appear to be slipping in Kursk and the Ukrainians are making advances. So, in short, the Russians have been going on offensives endlessly for about a year now, have supposedly been making massive gains in ground, and then as soon as the Ukrainians give any kind of a counterattack, their defenses fall apart and they start to lose. So it appears that the Russians have been caught lacking in 4K Ultra HD entirely because of those reasons. But moving on from that and into the rest of our clips around Chasiv Yar, we also get to see that the Ukrainians took down a Russian flag that had been raised in the area today. We can see that they did this from the Amazon Help Center. We could tell that by right here. This guy actually picked up the phone and said, hello, this is Amazon Help Center. How may I help you? And someone said, I'd like to make a refund. And he said, there's no refunds. Like he said, I don't know what you're talking about.
I also like he's on Discord as well to do his calls.
He's on Discord with the boys.
Yes, looking at the live replay. Oh, he's on that Fujitsu.
Man. Whoa. Look at that computer. Oh!
Here we're playing on the most top-end Windows graphics computers, the top-end, the 5090.
Oh, and they took the Russian flag down right there. Look at that. What a hit. Perfect hit.
Put it down on the ground where it belongs, Bled. Drop an extra one.
And then we didn't even get to see the outro. It just was one frame. But moving on from that now to Touretsk, we did get to hear that the Ukrainians have launched a new counteroffensive against the Russians in this area. This is a Telegram post by a Zelensky veterana, a Russian military blogger, who said that they did start the counteroffensive. And we also get to see where the counterattack was coming from. It's coming from the Russians' rear. You see, the Russians overextended near to this area. Or right around here. They overextended, and the Ukrainians are now attacking their flanks, and it appears that it may be collapsing at this point. So if that is the case, the Russians may be pushed back to where they were a couple of months ago, which was about 3 miles back. So not really good for them, and also we can read a little bit of what one of the Russian military bloggers said. After the most vile one ordered to stop the assault action so as not to scare off the emerging agreement, the Ukrainians suddenly began a counteroffensive near Pokrovsk. The attacks come from 3 sides at once, and they are trying to cut off the throat of our salient, which ensures the envelopment of Pokrovsk. The throat is only 7 kilometers wide, about as wide as his mother's, which already complicates logistics, and no one could even think of it. And then we got to see that some people put some clown emojis down there, which I feel are very well-deserved at this point. But moving on from that, it does appear that they're not doing that well in Pokrovsk, and we were able to see that the Russian airborne was getting mowed down in this area. Look at that. That lot of pickup, gone. Look at that. Another lot of pickup, gone. Look at this one. Another lot of pickup, gone. And lastly, a lot of pickup, also obliterated. 4 lot of pickups, all of them a part of the Russian airborne, are apparently not picking up, they're putting down, and they're not in a good way. So it appears that the Russians may be losing in this area. We'll be trying to get some more frontline information on that here soon to see if they're going to start getting cut off here in a little bit. But moving on from that now, the Pokrovsk area and down towards Velika Novosilka, we did get to see them hitting Russian forces down here. And take a look at this. You see the Ukrainians moving on in. Whoa, look at this professional video animation. Whoa.
I appreciate that.
This stuff isn't cheap, mind you.
No, it's not.
No, and it's not at all,
Very
actually.
expensive.
And you see them just slamming this Russian position with the tanks. They're really giving it to them.
They're giving them that ham and bacon.
Man. Ham and cheddar? Done.
Ham and cheddar. Done.
I've eaten so much ham and cheddar, Don. I have a diabetes, Don, and it is a very bad kind, Don. I sit around in my palace now, Don, eating as much ham and cheddar, Don, as I possibly can, Don.
It's just hideous, yes. You know?
My beard,
Ugh.
Don, it saves some of it for me, Don. That falls out of my mouth, Don. I get to snack on it later, Don.
Ugh. That's nasty as hell, man.
Man, you know it's true, though. We're speaking of
I
cattle
had to
here.
call you out on that one. I had to call them out.
Call them out. Call them out.
Also, good night to you, Eric. Good night.
Ta-ta and farewell.
A good one.
Ah, yes, I see you know your good nights well. Good one. And you, sir, are you ready to receive my good night to you? How dare you, sir? Get your hands off me. And we see one of the tanks zipping off. Oh man, that thing is zooming. And that's
Man, it is going.
What's this? Okay, that was just very mysterious for no reason. Anyways, moving on from that, it does appear that they are doing some work down in Velika Novosoka, and the 78th Battalion of the 102nd Territorial Defense Forces, which is also in this area, is doing their part as well. I'm doing my part, they say, as they slam this drone into this bunker. That's a Starship Troopers reference. And we can see them hitting the bunker, and it's gone.
Oh,
and that one's gone as well. And here goes another. I don't know what they're putting on these drones, but they are like nuclear bombs nearly. Oh, and they just hit a security camera.
You know what's worse than the Ukrainians knocking off your CCTV cameras?
What?
Having them knock off your CCTV cameras and then also hitting you with the bomb blade.
Man, disrespect on our name, blade. It's like disrespecting, creasing our Jordans, blade. But nevertheless, we did get to see this Ukrainian MRAP.
That's pretty nice looking.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Moving on. We also get to see down in Arikiv, there was the Kraken unit in Zaporizhia. Look at this guy with the Groza shotgun here. Look at this guy sitting in this house. Look at this guy, these guys, hanging around with Ukrainian ARs and CZ Brens. Look at this guy with a PKP. Look at this guy. Wait, there was a guy back there looking down at him while he was in the staircase to the basement. Kind of creeping on him a little. But look at this guy taking a nap. Look at this guy. Look at these guys sitting near a blacked out MRAP. Look at these guys drinking lighter fluid. What the hell is that? That's like a lighter fluid.
Is that Maltai?
That's not Maltai, dude. Maltai would have like a white, non-see-through kind of like a can, you know?
Oh, okay.
Look at this guy sitting here in this basement. Look at this guy sitting here with his, I don't know what that is, but that is a Ukrainian AR. Look at this guy sitting in what appears to be a former gym shower. But there they are. They're just sitting around. Look at those guys. I mean, they're out there. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also get to see some Russian forces getting hit as well by the 148th Air Assault Artillery Brigade's artillery. Okay, we're going to be muting that. Sounds like some sort of Armenian restaurant music, so we're going to be muting that so that way we don't get copyrighted. I'm sure that has a copyright on it. And we can see that the ammunition that they hit is toasting now. We can see a Russian artillery battery in that shed, and you know what's about to happen? They're about to get battered. The Ukrainians put batter in battery, and they are battering the hell out of them.
I'm telling you, man, they really are.
Oh, and they're on a tank. Oh, whoa.
Whoa! Here is why Ukrainian artillery is the best in the world.
But moving on from that, it is truly fairly good. And we're going to be moving on from that area and down into Kherson, where we got to see near Novokhovka that the Ukrainians got to blow up a Russian boat. And we see them rewinding now as they fly back over, and they're about to chip it up into little bits and pieces. Reese's Pieces, Reese's Puffs, Reese's Puffs. Oh, eat 'em up, eat 'em up, eat 'em up, eat 'em up. And they got him. They obliterated him. Look at that. The drone hit right on the side of the boat, blasted it to pieces. Debris everywhere. It's a real hell of a sight. Look at that. But moving on from that and on to our next clip down in the area, we also get to see the 73rd Marines Special Operations Forces conducting a raid on the Russians. It was seen through the infrared camera of a drone. When you see the Ukrainians out on their boats, and you see the Russians on that little island right there, and the Ukrainians are opening fire now. They're laying down that heat. Most of the bullets landing in the Dnipro. Funnily enough, you can actually see the impacts there. But it's probably keeping the Russians down, because they're pretty shocked by this. It's a drive-by shooting on the river, so that doesn't happen much, you know. Most people don't deal with that kind of a thing in their life. When you see the Russians laying low in the trees.
Also, Andrew Honeycutt said, "I'm genuinely surprised you guys can stream these videos. Oh, we don't show the graphic parts. That's why we can show these. But if the graphic part was shown, that would not be good."
Yes. That's very true. I don't know if that was a flock of birds flying at the bottom. Oh, and they just got hit by artillery. Wow. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but one hell of a sight. One hell of a sight for sure. Meanwhile, down in Oleski, we got to see the Ukrainians hitting the Russians even farther. This is the Shark drone operators. They're shark-like, and their skin is very smooth. As we all know, shark skin is very smooth, and, you know, you can practically slide right off them.
Although most people don't. Most people get eaten.
Most people get mauled, some mangled, maybe dead, but sharks are smooth. We all know that as a fact.
Jenkins USA said, "Is there an enforcer's equivalent from the Russian side of view?" I would say no. Because I think the only thing they have that's even close would be Soliev, and he's just a loon.
Yeah, he's pretty crazy. He actually taught at a college here in Alabama for a while, up in Huntsville, I think for like a year or two, and then he went back to Russia. And that was way back like in the 2000s. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see here the drones attacking an offshore rig. Check this out. And we're going to be muting that.
That scared the hell out of me, man.
Whoa. Was that a dolphin jumping by the drone? Let's take a look here. That is a dolphin jumping along with the drone. Look at that.
Look at that. It sure is.
Oh, goodness. Someone's coming in here trying to tell us how to run the show.
Hey, wait a minute, buddy. Hey, hold on, Jack. Whoa.
I gotta say this. I thank you so much for your inputs. It's very greatly appreciated. However, we get thousands of inputs a year, every year, and we've been doing this for 3 years. The show is what it is. If you like it, you like it, and if you don't, you don't. But I'm not really into, unless if they're actually good criticisms, people criticizing like basic elements of the show. If it's a problem for you, there's plenty of other shows out there. Not to make it sound like, you know, we don't respect people's inputs, but you know, when you like start to complain about a key core component of the channel that has not changed for 3 years, at that point, there's nothing I can tell you rather than if you don't like it, then this might not be the channel for you. But holy moly, dude, that whole thing blew up. Like they hit the bottom support with the boat and the whole rig went up.
The whole damn thing. Also, by the way, I saw Steve in the live chase. Isn't Soliev's son in New York living some type of life? I think he is in New York, or he's in London, one or the other. Soliev's son is not in Russia, which is fascinating. Also, Soliev was not in Russia either until he just recently came back to go crazy in Russia and start becoming a real propagandist nut.
Yeah, he's a real nut nowadays. Bleh. He's crazy on Russian TV. I mean, he's legitimately, I think, psycho of some sort.
He's the real insane. Oh, Bliat, if the time keeps going by, Bliat, I might have to, I might have to go insane too.
Oh man, you're telling me, man. I drank a lot of coffee and the exhaustion's already starting to hit me again. But moving on from that and up into Kyiv, it's now time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1082 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я українцям. Сьогодні важлива подія для нашого регіону, загалом для Європи, держави Балтії, добрі друзі України від'єдналися від російської енергомережі. Їхні енергосистеми відтепер повністю синхронізовані з європейською континентальною системою. Україна це вже зробила у 2022 році, і зараз Балтійські держави теж позбулися залежності. Москва більше не зможе використовувати енергію як зброю проти Балтійських держав. І також це означає, що Європа стала ще більш цілісною. Саме такого курсу ми всі в Європі маємо дотримуватись і надалі, всі на континенті. Це стосується, зокрема, країн Центральної Європи, тих, які досі мають договори з Росією. Треба більше працювати з Америкою, ЛНЖ, газ, нафта. Треба більше працювати з нашими партнерами в сусідніх країнах з Євросоюзом в цьому регіоні, щоб імпортувати необхідну енергію. Кавказ, Близький Схід, Північна Африка. Чим менше буде залежностей європейців від Росії, тим скоріше вдасться гарантувати надійну безпеку усім в Європі. Я вітаю наших друзів Литву, Латвію, Естонію із сьогоднішнім досягненням. Важливо, що Польща допомагає, і це знов доводить співпраця між нами усіма – це незалежність кожного з нас. Я вдячний Євросоюзу за підтримку нашого регіону, нашої спільної безпеки. Так само разом треба тиснути і на намагання Росії використовувати свої танкери, свій флот проти нас, проти всієї Європи. Ми в Україні нещодавно розширили санкційний тиск, щоб не тільки танкери з Росії були під санкціями, не тільки фірми, на які вони зареєстровані, але й щоб капітани цих суден, люди, які працюють на війну, теж відчули цей тиск. Це треба підтримувати на загальноєвропейському рівні. Треба, щоб Європейський Союз приєднався до цих санкцій у сфері енергетики. І ще одне. Була сьогодні доповідь головкому Сирського, Донеччина, Покровський, Времівський, інші жорсткі напрямки, надзвичайна хоробрість наших воїнів 33-й, 225-й, 425-й, окремі штурмові полки. Дякую вам, хлопці, дуже. І також 82-га, 95-та бригади, Курський напрямок, дуже ефективне знищення ворога. Ми маємо стійко захищати всі наші позиції. Чим більше нашої стійкості на фронті, тим більш сильно буде наша дипломатія, наша робота з партнерами. Дякую кожному і кожній, хто з України. Слава Україні!
And
Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1082 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And you know, folks, I've got to admit to y'all, it's pretty shocking whenever I start putting out numbers like these, day 1082, because it almost means that we're 3 months away in total from the 1000th day of the war, and it's also meaning that we're getting fairly close to being 10% of the way to the next 1000 days of war, which is really bizarre when you think about it like that, because it seems like no time has passed at all since day 1000. But nevertheless, I do have to say that I thank you all greatly for being here tonight. So far, 55,000 people have watched this stream in about 2 hours, and we had a peak viewership of nearly 10,000 people. That's fairly shocking, considering that the Super Bowl was happening tonight, and we generally expect incredibly low viewership whenever there's a major televised event happening inside the United States, because most of our viewership is made up of the United States of America, around 50% or a little bit more every night. But we are entirely grateful and appreciative of every single one of y'all here in the United States and around the world watching the stream tonight and getting your news from this channel. There are many channels out there that provide the news, but we are entirely honored and incredibly appreciative to know that so many of y'all continue to choose the Enforcer channel as your primary source of news each and every day. I have to thank you all so much once again for watching so far, and we still have a lot to go, so if y'all want to stick around, please make sure to do so, because there will be loads of questions, loads of things that we talk about, rabbit holes, as a matter of fact, and I believe, Matthew, that we still have some top donors left to cover, and so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we have one last top donor to cover, and this one goes to Gary S., who put in a $50 donation and brought us up to
Hey!
$3,602 raised, well above our $2,500 goal. So huge shout out to you, Gary, for that support and the generosity to tonight's fundraiser, and a huge shout out to everybody else as well. But with that, it is now time to get to all of your questions that you've been throwing in throughout the entire stream. But first, let's get the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had the whole roster. It was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Burnett, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Joni Dog, and Norm Pritchett. And they said that the Morse for tonight says from the LSA Signal Corps, LLT, LSA.
There should have been a lot more to it than that.
That was all they say. That was it.
Well, if that was all the Morse code message said, it should have been a load more, and I believe it was, but still. That's the sound of money. You'll get the last part of it correct. I don't know where the whole message was before that, but still, you'll get the dent on the nail. Congratulations. Big shout out to y'all. You got the end part, and that is pretty impressive as a matter of fact. And so with that, I believe we are on to the live chat questions at large. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our first one here, this one goes to Elvis, who says, what do you guys think the West would do if Russia just gave Iran some nukes?
Well, we wouldn't really be able to do anything at that point. We would probably just sanction both of them heavily, but it's not like we could militarily invade them, because then there's a chance they could start lobbing nukes at folks, and that wouldn't really do too well. So, I would have to say, there's not really a lot we could do. That would be a really screwed up situation, honestly, and there's really no good way to respond to it without us getting nuked or just having to let it sit by and just happen. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And let's see here. Someone said, "You ever gonna update that computer? Do you see an update thing in the top corner? Come on." Are you gonna update your eyes? I'm just kidding. By the way. but let's see here. Someone else said, "Enforcer, what do you think about the Tommy gun?" I'll be honest with you. After shooting one a couple of times, I'm not really a fan of them. They're cool looking, but they're not really fun to shoot, and I'll tell you why. Like, let me go get one. One, they're heavy, like really heavy, like insanely heavy for what they are. So here's one of them. This is insanely heavy, especially with that 100 round drum mag on it. These things are just ungodly and unwieldy because of their weight, especially when you try and shoulder them. It's like trying to shoulder a medium machine gun in terms of weight. Not only that, but this front foregrip, I have to say, this is the best thing about the Tommy gun. So ergonomical. It like perfectly fits in your hand, and it perfectly fits like the grip angle and everything. It's a great like foregrip, especially on these, not the military versions. But one thing that really gets me, one thing that really just knocks my socks off about this thing is how the hell do you shoulder it? Like, the stock bends downwards. Like, you have to fit this thing like you can't shoulder it like a normal gun or a rifle or anything like that, because the stock is like bent so far downwards. You have to practically just like kind of like guesswork or how to hold it to look down the sights. It's not that great. Like that's my main complaint about this thing, is that back stock. If they had made it a little bit more flush and flat, that would have made a lot more sense, and that would have worked a lot better. Now, that stock is actually perfect, mind you. It's like the perfect curvature to fit it like under your arm and just kind of like hold it at the hip and fire it. But I mean, like, we don't live in a mobster movie here. We live in real life. So if you're ever wanting to accurately shoot the thing, best of luck to you, because it's going to be a little bit hard to pull off. Now, I will say this, though. There was something that we made as a replacement to the Tommy gun that was supposed to be cheaper, and I'd actually say that this thing is better, which sounds stupid because it's just a pipe, but I believe the grease gun is better, simply because you can actually aim down the sights on this thing. It has practically no recoil. The fire rate is a good bit slower, so ammo consumption is more efficient. And I just think it's better all around. Like, I'd actually say, if I had to pick in between the Tommy gun or the grease gun, I'd actually pick the grease gun. It's ugly, yes. It's not as sleek, and it's not as glamorous as the Tommy gun. But in my opinion, this thing is better than the Tommy gun in pretty much all ways that actually count. At least in my opinion. But that would be my take. Like, that's my take. Matthew, what do you think?
I would honestly say it looks pretty neat, but it's very, very basic looking. So I would have to rate it with a Doug score of 7 out of 10.
Hey, that's not bad, actually, for this thing. Like this is our version of the Sten gun, and the Sten gun wasn't anything to write home about. But everyone said that this thing was really reliable. Like, and also it had a dust cover, which is something Tommy guns don't have. Like this thing right here, you close that shut. That's the safety, by the way.
Huh, that's the safety. That's kind of like I thought you. So wait a minute. Do you like this one or not?
I like it.
Then you should like Glocks then, because that's like Glocks really don't have safeties either.
No. This thing has a safety because there's a little indent in there that holds the bolt back. So when you close the dust cover, the bolt can't move forward because it's physically obstructed by the dust cover.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, like, as far as the safety, that's a legitimate safety in my books. Like, because if the bolt can't even move forward until that dust cover's open, that's safe. Like, you can't even shoot the thing. So this is a pretty decent gun. Tommy gun, though, not really. I used to like him when I didn't have one, and then we got one to try and review it. And Jay Bagwell, who is a friend of the channel, was there when we were trying to review the Tommy gun, and we ended up sitting there longer than we were shooting it, trying to get the drum mag out of it, and also a million other things. And then when I've ever shot a real one that's actually automatic, I've just never been a fan of them either, like trying to aim them and shoot them. And I have shot grease guns and Tommy guns, and in my opinion, the grease gun just wins hands down every single time. If we're talking about like World War II submachine guns. But if we're talking about submachine guns from any period of history, obviously the modern ones are far better. In my opinion, the MP5 is a great submachine gun. Honestly, my favorite from the modern era. Like, who can beat that? No one can. Like, at least in my opinion, if you're talking about a pistol cartridge submachine gun, this is just the best there is out there. I don't think the MP7, I've never got to handle or shoot an MP7, so I'm kind of a little biased on that. I don't really think the MP7 would be as great as this, because the MP7 is whack looking. Like, look at that.
It's honestly a little bit whack, I will admit.
It's whack looking. It seems like you don't really have enough distance in between your trigger hand on the pistol grip and the foregrip to really seem like you would have a good bit of control over this thing. I don't know. Like, I just don't really believe in the MP7 too much. MP5, though, is great. And also, I know it's great because they used it in Squid Game, and therefore it has to be great. I'm just kidding, by the way. I've shot MP5s in automatic before. They're pretty good. Like, I think they're great. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Great rabbit hole. I just literally just picked two right out of the live chat right there to answer. And who knows? You might be next if you throw in a good question. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, big shout out to Nasred, who put in a 1,082 SEK donation right there. Look at that, a big one. It brought us up to $3,734 raised, and big shout out to Nasred for the massive support of the fundraiser. But with that, we are now moving on to our next live chat question, and this one goes to none other than Jay Bagwell, who says, speaking of crazy characters from the CIA, check out Frank Sturgis. He was into a little bit of everything.
Let's go check him out. He's psychotic. Like,
He looks a little crazy.
He is psychotic. Like, you can already tell. Let's see. He's one of the plumbers. He was one of the plumbers. Listen, when the president does it, he's not guilty. Like, he's one of the plumbers. No freaking way. I should have known this. I should have known this, Jay Bagel. I should have known it. I didn't know. But this guy, so I'll tell you what the plumbers were. Like, we're not getting political here, but I'll explain it to y'all because, like, I do know political history. It's just that we act like it doesn't exist here in this channel. So, Nixon was a little paranoid. Everyone knows it. Honestly, I will say, though, like, I'm generally not really that critical of most presidents. Nixon was as okay a president as there was of others. Not that bad. The scandal at the end, though, soured it for everyone, mostly. But before the scandal, I mean, Nixon was the guy. I mean, he won the 1972 presidential election in a landslide that's never been seen before in U.S. history. He won every damn state except for Massachusetts and D.C.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big win, actually.
I mean, that's insane. I mean, he won the popular vote by 61%. I mean, and by the way, some people would say that, oh, you know, that was because of Watergate. Watergate really didn't reveal anything to the Nixon campaign that was really of any value that would help them to win to this degree. But he just won a landslide. I mean, that kind of shows you how popular he was with the public to be able to win a landslide like that. So generally, a lot of people believed he was an incredibly good president for his time. Of course, that isn't kind of a view that exists today. But nevertheless, Nixon was a little paranoid, and he wanted to make sure that there were no leaks that got out of the White House about anything that had to do with his paranoia and wanting to make sure that, you know, people weren't screwing him. So what he did is he created a department pretty much in the White House, but completely detached from the White House, called the Plumbers. And the Plumbers were the people who went around and, according to Nixon, sealed the leaks. And also they went on to do a whole bunch of other clandestine things, like the Watergate scandal, that would end up getting Nixon in a position where he was forced to resign. But apparently Frank Anthony Sturgis is one of those guys. But let's see here. He started in several branches of the military, and in the Cuban Revolution of 1958, he worked as an undercover operative of the CIA and was alleged to be involved in the assassination of JFK. That's interesting. But let's see here. Activated, let's see. Dang. Dude, this is his early life and military service section. There's already like a whole book here of what he did. This guy, I'll be honest with you, J-Bag, I don't know anything about this guy. He's new to me, and you just helped me to find him. But, dang. Wait, hang on. Oh, he's standing on San Juan Hill right here in 1959.
Huh, that's crazy. This guy's always been a little bit out there.
Yeah, he's been everywhere. He's been traveling around. Let's see. Let's see here. Wait a minute, what? He got in trouble after... Wait a minute, what did he do here? In 1973, they were convicted of conspiracy, burglary, and wiretapping. Well, that's all because of the Watergate deal from here. But anyways, moving on from that. Let's see. Sent a letter indicating Sturgis has been covertly cooperating with the DEA. He was transporting cars stolen in Texas to Mexico.
What the hell's this guy up to?
Dude, he's like, so basically on one day I'll like break into Watergate for the president. Next day I'm running a side hustle of breaking in the cars and driving them into Mexico. It's like, I don't know what the hell is up with this guy, dude. Anyways, after leaving prison, he served as a Miami police informant and continued providing intelligence on the anti-Castro activities of Dr. Orlando Bosch. Let's see, claimed that, let's see. So apparently he said that they were trying to find some secret memorandum from the Castro government. Let's see. In response to CIA issued a public statement. They had never been connected with them in any way. And let's see. I was a spy. I was involved in assassination plots, conspiracy, overthrow several foreign governments, including Cuba, Panama, Guatemala, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Let's see, I smuggled arms and men into Cuba for Castro and against Castro. I broke into intelligence files, I stolen photographed secret documents. That's what spies do. And then he was pardoned by Jimmy Carter. Wow. That's like just the craziest ending to the whole story. He gets pardoned by Jimmy Carter. I'd like, this guy's story though, like I can only touch the surface on it. I would actually read this if we were off air. But this is a wild story for someone. But yeah, you're right. This guy was involved in a little bit of everything. Not only was he involved in Watergate, he was involved in just literal Grand Theft Auto and then driving the cars into Mexico at the same time. Who would have thought? Like, who would have thunk that this would be the guy doing that kind of a deal? But wait a minute. Let's see. Hold up. Dude, there's a lot of stuff about this guy. This guy actually has a book for the large part compared to most people on Wikipedia. So that's fairly interesting. Also, wait a minute, hang on. See some people saying deny. Let me go back and read that again. Oh, I forgot to read that part. Was denied the pardon. Not given the pardon. Sorry, everyone. I misread that. But nevertheless, still very interesting here. And thank you, everyone, for catching that, because I actually just misread that and moved on. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. But still, a huge thanks to you, Jay Bagwell, for bringing up a very interesting rabbit hole on someone I knew nothing about or even knew that they existed. And crazily enough, they were involved in the whole Plumbers deal. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Marc-Andre Burnett, who says, what is the most logical method that Iran could use to attack America with a nuke, hypothetically?
Dirty bomb would be the most likely way that they would attack the United States with a nuclear weapon. Because Iran's foreign actions largely revolve around terroristic operations is the best way to put it. They really don't ever conduct conventional action, and firing a nuclear weapon directly to the United States from Iran would be suicidal for the Iranians. So they would most likely do some sort of a dirty bomb attack of some kind. We also heard that apparently the president of the United States was openly being threatened with attacks, and assassination attempts were conducted on him by the Islamic Republic of Iran during the campaign of last year, which came out today. So it's fairly interesting here. That generally is how they've been working their modus operandum for the past year. So I would assume that'll also be their modus operandum for a nuclear attack as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best it can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Neo Saturn, who says, can the new Navy laser be used to intercept ICBMs?
No, it's more of a replacement for the close-in weapon system, which a lot of people love and adore because you hear that incoming, incoming, incoming kind of a deal, but it's to replace this. This is the Phalanx close-in weapon system, which is a weapon on board a ship that you never really want to use. It is the last line of defense before the ship is to be hit. So let's look at the Arleigh Burke that was carrying the Helios. So here we go. This is the Arleigh Burke class destroyer that was carrying the Helios. And there are multiple different steps of air defense before you actually make it to using a close-in weapon system. First is the vertical launch cells that are loaded with anti-air missiles, usually some sort of a REM-3 or a REM-2 or something like that these days. But nevertheless, they'll be fired from a vertical launch cell. These can have a range of nearly 160 miles, or way farther than that, especially if it's a REM-3. And those are your first line of defense, long range, mind you, as well, against incoming weapons heading towards ships, like an anti-ship missile. If those end up missing the incoming anti-ship missile, the next line of defense is the main gun, the 127 millimeter on the foredeck. And let me make sure that's a 127 millimeter because someone's probably going to correct me here in a second. It is a 127 millimeter because this thing actually isn't a gun in the sense that a lot of people would imagine. This thing is actually a multi-role gun. It can be an anti-air gun like a flak cannon, and it can also be an anti-ship gun as well, but usually used in the air defense role. But this thing actually is able to fire proximity fuse rounds towards the incoming anti-ship missile, and the shrapnel, much like it would against an airplane, can take down the incoming missile. And that can largely occur from about 12 miles out all the way up till the ship is actually hit. The main gun can continue to fire at that incoming missile. The last line of defense, and this is when a missile gets around 3 miles away from the ship, so this means that it's imminent that it's going to hit. The Phalanx close-in weapon system here on the back of the vessel will engage that missile and fire at it. If it does not end up hitting that incoming missile and shoot it down, the ship will most likely get hit and it will most likely sink. Modern warships really are not made to survive even a single hit. If they get hit, they're down. That's largely how it's expected to go in modern naval warfare, because the amount of explosives in an anti-ship missile these days is so large, and also most modern vessels in the Navy have practically no armor. They're just designed to not get hit. That's the plan. They have enough countermeasures that if they do get hit, the situation was completely hopeless and there was no point for armor anyways. And also the size of the explosive hitting the ship would be big enough. It would most likely completely destroy the welds that were holding together any kind of plate armor, and it would fall off anyways, and the ship would most likely start to keel over heavily to one side, and that would be a big issue in its own right. So there is no armor on modern ships. So if they get hit, they go down. So the Helios system, from what we generally understand, let me go, here we go. Here's the Helios. The Helios is generally supposed to be the successor to the Phalanx Sea-Wiz, from what we know. It's some kind of a closer-in weapon system. Maybe it also has a similar range to the 127mm main gun, but it certainly is not powerful enough or has a long enough range to be able to take over the job of the first line of defense that the the surface-to-air missiles on board an Arleigh Burke or any other kind of U.S. Navy vessel would have. So from what we're generally understanding, this is most likely going to be some kind of a close-in weapon system. And here's the description that we have on Wikipedia as well, which seems to be the one I've seen online. It's designed to intercept combat drones, fast attack craft, and missiles. So based off of this kind of an assessment of what kind of targets it's supposed to be hitting, it appears that it is generally designed to intercept weapons that are getting incredibly close to the ship that the main missiles or the flak gun was not able to deal with. That's generally the best way to put it. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to, let's see, this one will go to Thomas Denhazy, who says, how hard is it, and do you need anything or everything for normal nuke to produce a small tactical one?
Yes, you need all the same things to produce a tactical nuclear weapon as you would need a strategic nuclear weapon. The difference in between a tactical nuclear weapon and a strategic nuclear weapon is the delivery system and the megaton yield of the explosive. Those are the only differences, but beyond that, they both mechanically work exactly the same. So I hope that does answer that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Clem, who says, "Where does Kaliningrad get its electricity?"
Kaliningrad gets its well, actually, that's kind of the funny thing. Kaliningrad uses a lot of, you know what, let me go show you all that. Coal consumption in Leningrad. Let's see here. Yeah. From what I've heard in the past, Kaliningrad still relies heavily on coal to produce any kind of power. So let's see if we have any sort of information about the coal. Cool. Where is the cool? Cool. Where is it? Cool. Let's see here. Cool. Where's the energy grid? Cool. Well, where is it? Let's see. Also, by the way, notice there are no Germans living in Kaliningrad anymore. It is literally all entirely Russians.
1.2% Ukrainians in 2021, though. That's crazy.
That is crazy. I will bet you that number has fallen. But let's see here. Dang, dude, it dropped. Look at that. Dude, 2010, it was 3.7%. 2021, down to 1.2%.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. But let's see here. Let's see here. Economy, power generation. The electricity grid is not connected to anywhere else. So there's no way to even import power to Kaliningrad, according to what Wikipedia is saying. They just aren't connected to any kind of an external grid. So let's see. They produce all of their power internally. Let's see. The station was expanded, planning 2 nuclear power reactors, which would cost about $8 billion. That was suspended in 2013, and in 2014 the project was abandoned. Liquefied natural gas from St. Petersburg supplied some of the energy in the oblast. And let's see. In 2025, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia disconnected high-voltage power lines linking them to Russia and Belarus on their grid, then operated autonomously for a day before connecting to the European grid via Poland on Sunday. So it looks as though, from what I'm understanding, it seems as though they're entirely self-sufficient and usually get most of their energy from a coal power plant, or 1 or 2 coal power plants from what I can tell. But I hope that does address that well, because it looks like the answer was also a little ambiguous, because while it said it's not connected to anything, it also said it might be connected to something through Poland, but I would doubt that, especially with the relations that Poland has with the Russians at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are moving on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to, let's find a really new one here. Let's see. Edward Casey said, how did Iran actually get nuclear material in the first place? Where'd they even find it?
I believe they actually have uranium inside of their country that they can mine and process, and I believe that's where they're getting the enriched nuclear material from. Let me check that. Does Iran have uranium? Yes, they have 2 uranium mines inside of Iran. So the answer to that is yes, they do have uranium. Interestingly enough, if y'all want to know something cool, let me go pull this up. Cane Creek, Utah. Here we go. This is Cane Creek. And let me make sure that we're in the right spot of this area. Hold up. We should be in the right spot. Or are we? No. Actually, it's over here near Moab. Sorry. But over here at Moab, the town that has the Moab bomb, named after it, mind you, is the Colorado River. But most importantly, down the way, down this river, and let me make sure to follow this. Follow the railroad. Follow the railroad. We have to follow the railroad. So, let's follow this railroad. Let's see here. To get washed out or something? What the hell's going on around here? But let's see here. If we follow the railroad down Potash Road, you'll find something very cool right about here. This is Intrepid Potash. And Intrepid Potash, if I remember correctly, also has I believe that actually is a uranium mine. And let me make sure. Let's see. Dang, 1 second. Hang on. They produce potassium chloride. I believe there is a uranium mine somewhere around this area, if I remember correctly, because the Union Pacific, which owns this railroad, actually does service a uranium mine somewhere on this on what's called the Cane Creek, I think, branch line near to Moab. So it's a very interesting kind of a thing. It's just that I don't know exactly where the uranium mine is around here, but it is around here somewhere. And also, what is this? Oh, dang, look at that. Dinosaur
What is
track
that?
prints.
It's a dinosaur trackman?
Dinosaur track prints.
Oh, I was about to say a trackman. I was about to say, what the hell?
Man, look, they even have a statue of one.
Look at that. That thing's got some eraser wire on top of it or something.
Man, I think those are like those wrought iron gate things. Like, you know, like on top of the wrought iron gates. I think those are those
think
just
so.
painted. But look at that, man. Dinosaur tracks.
That's kind of crazy, honestly.
Yeah, that's actually pretty wild. That's really cool that those exist. What else is around here in the middle of this frozen wasteland? Well, not frozen wasteland. It's a desert wasteland. What am I talking about here? Anyways, let's see here. The Elvis Rock? Why is it called the Elvis Rock? Oh, it's a rock. That's where that rock is. Dude, that one's the one that was on like a screensaver years ago. Remember?
Oh, yeah, I think I do remember that, actually. It looks familiar.
You want Bunny.
Not like that. That looks very, very pudgy.
That's a very cute bunny. We have to pet that bunny one day. Let's see here. Man, this is actually a really cool place. Makes me want to go out there and take a look at this part of Utah. But also, you know another thing that's cool, Matthew? Have you ever seen the Catalina Island?
I have not seen that, no.
Well, I'm going to see if I can show you something here. 1 second. Hang on. Let me just go 1 second. Do you remember this?
The 21st night of September. Oh, yes, I do remember that. That's a MacBook screensaver, actually.
That is a picture of this part of the northern area of Catalina Island that makes that screensaver right there.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never known where that picture was taken from, but yeah, that's a MacBook screensaver there.
Man, it is an incredibly cool island. I actually looked into it a while ago because I was watching some documentaries on it for no reason. But they built this really cool little town down here, and it called Avalon. And take a look at this, dude. It is so cool, and it's all on the island. Like the only way to get out here is by boat. I don't believe there's any airport service to this island. It's a part of the state of California. It's a part of the United States. You know, it's a part of California. And they also built this thing, which is called the Catalina Casino. And it's not a casino like a gambling casino. It's just like a public hangout area. It was designed as that and still is that very thing. But for some reason they called it a casino. But this is what Avalon looks like from the air.
That's pretty cool, actually. That looks like very, very expensive and nice.
Oh yeah, it was like this was the go-to hangout place for Hollywood executives back in like the 30s and 40s and stuff. This was the place they would go. So they would get on a boat in LA and they would go the 30-mile jaunt to Catalina Island and to Avalon. But the Catalina Casino is super cool, man. Look at the inside of this thing.
Why, yeah, that is very, very nice. Look at that. Look at it.
Man, look at that. Like it's just so cool, so amazing. It's Art Deco style because it was made during that time. Really, really cool. Like it's incredibly cool. But yeah, like I want to go there someday and check that thing out. Really neat. But nevertheless, I hope that tells y'all a lot about Catalina Island for no reason at all, just a fun rabbit hole, just for the hell of it. And Matthew, you never know it, but America has so many islands that are really nice, like Catalina Island, and then you have, Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, and you just never think about them really until they're like put in front of you, and then you're like, oh, those are pretty cool.
Yeah, it's true. Like you just don't realize it, but there's a lot of really nice places hanging around the island parts up here.
Yeah, and then you also have a new shore ham. I wonder if they have any new hams along the shore. Well,
Probably not. Probably lobster.
I'm not really seeing many hams along this shore. I'm seeing a neat lighthouse though. That's actually a pretty cool one. But no hams along this shore, and they're not new. That's for sure. If you find them, is that a freaking emu?
Man, honestly, it looks like it.
Dude, that's a wild. But there it is from the skies above, looking down below. What a cool place. I'd actually like to see some of these islands. And you know, Matthew, you can actually go to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket pretty easily, because in Hyannis here in the mainland, you can actually ride the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority's trains all the way to the station, get out, walk a couple of blocks down here to this ferry, get on it, and go straight either to Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I did not know that you could do that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Check this out. Look at this. There's the train. There's one of the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Area trains. Here's the station.
Oh, the Peter Pan, eh?
Yeah, the Peter Pan. You go to Neverland. No, not that one. But still, how neat. I mean, it's just so cool. This train's seasonal, by the way, though. It only goes in the summer, so that's kind of like the caveat to it. Is that it's kind of like a summertime thing to do that, but it's still really cool. Because the alternative is that you just don't. So, with that, I hope that does address that well for all of you. And let's see. And Angel Art said, I was wondering how trains could be tied into this. Well, it's one of the few times I've ever seen public transport actually interconnect in America, so that's what made it cool to me and made me remember it, is I was like, wow, you can ride the train there and then get on a ferry and ride out to these islands. Like, literally one of the few times I've ever seen public transportation actually, like, fit together in America, because usually, like, public transportation or anything public these days leads to nowhere. Like, there's a sidewalk kind of around where we are right now, because we take afternoon walks, and it leads to nowhere. Like, it just ends. Like, it's not a part of a continuous sidewalk or anything like that. Like, public infrastructure in this country is almost non-existent at this point beyond the roads. So if you're not in the car, you're just screwed at this point. So that it's really neat to see something like this, because it's like, wow, that's so neat. Interconnected transport. You just never see that in America. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and this one is going to go to, let's see here. This one's going to go to, this one goes to Games Green Coffee, who says, have you lads heard about the meteor heading our way that we maybe kind of sort of might have to nuke? And cheers. I feel like they're always saying something like that about some like asteroid or meteor or something coming toward Earth, but it never really happens, it seems like. Or if it does, it turns out to be nothing. So maybe it's an issue, but maybe not. But I'm just not sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I've heard that a lot of times in my life about the meteors that are coming our way. I've heard a little bit about it. It's not really anything I pay attention to too much, though, because I've been fear-mongered at least 3 times in my life that meteors were going to hit the Earth, and one time I was told that it was going to be the ordained end of the planet, and then it just passed right by, so I was like, these things aren't really that much of anything. So with that, I hope that does address that well. We are on, I think, to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Knox Date, who says, have you guys seen the video of the Moscow authorities finding an underground MMA club and dragging the draft dodgers out?
No, I haven't seen that one. That one sounds fun, though. And if I can find it, I'm going to take a gander at it. But still, thank you so much once again for asking such an interesting question. Just unfortunately, I have not seen that. And so with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is like the last person who hit the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be Christian Farley, who says, in your opinion, what are the odds of Putin making a decision to attack NATO? And also, has there any updates on China and Taiwan?
Can you reread that one again, Matthew? There was actually a lot in that.
He said, what is your opinion on the odds of Putin actually making a decision to attack NATO? And number 2, any updates on China and Taiwan?
So far, not really any updates on China and Taiwan, kind of usual background noise, so that's why we're not really covering it too much. As far as the Russian Federation possibly going to war with NATO, it really depends on how desperate Putin is getting, and it looks like he's getting fairly desperate to keep the war going at all costs. And if the United States continues to ramp up support for Ukraine and really drive the Russians into a corner, it looks like they're going to force some sort of a major confrontation with NATO, because even if they're losing, the nuclear threat looms, and that will force everyone to the negotiating table, possibly on Russia's terms at that point, because it would either be, keep fighting them and get nuked, or negotiate a way out. So they might actually move on into doing something like that in the future. So I would say the chances are getting a little bit higher at this point. I won't even give a percentage on that, but it certainly seems like the chances of a greater war with NATO is certainly starting to increase these days. And so with that, I hope that does address that to all of you all the best I can, at least in my opinion. And of course, it is time for us to round out tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for being here. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run this stream for all of y'all. We had 61,000 people watch this stream before it ended, and we were able to raise a whopping $3,763 as of the point this stream is ending right now.
Damn.
A huge thanks to all of y'all so much once again for not only raising so much in support of Ukraine, but also watching this news. We will see you all tomorrow in a short war summary if there is enough news to make, or we will see y'all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for being here on the Fundraiser stream. With the Super Bowl running, we still had a load of people here tonight, which is really good to see. And once again, we will see you all on the Tuesday night stream and maybe on the short war video tomorrow. Also, a huge shout out to Bex Chitwood, by the way, just throwing a 100 to the fundraiser.
Dang!
And brought us up to 3,900 nearly. That's tremendous as well. And with that, folks, we'll see you on Tuesday, like I said. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
on me shall